charnel houses are a very common place across mainland Europe, mainly Catholic countries, as it was originally a Catholic practice. People believed that their earthly remains had to be kept in consecrated grounds to ascend to heaven after the Last Judgment in their belief system.
Greetings, Legion. Welcome to episode 247 of Into the Necrosphere. Last week, I spoke to a living legend. This week, I welcome a future legend, the great Simon Lucas. He's the drummer for Winterfylleth, arguably now one of the most popular English black metal bands. They just put out the extraordinarily well-received The Imperious Horizon, and if you cast your mind back a couple of weeks ago, you'll recall that I had Nick Wallwork and Chris Norton of Winterfylleth on the podcast to talk about that record. Simon and I have bumped into each other routinely at shows, at festivals. We've wanted to do one of these for a while now. Finally managed to get the diaries to align, and it did not disappoint. In addition to being the drummer for Winterfylleth, Simon is also an accomplished filmographer. He is a budding audiophile, and we had plenty to talk about over the course of 90 minutes plus. That's coming your way very shortly, but before we get to that, Zuvembie Necroneon are an unsigned band operating out of London in the UK. They've just put out a track that I know you will absolutely love. So feast your ears on Paranoid Destructor. Paranoid Destructor is the name of the song. The band is Zuvembie Necroneon, being showcased on my unsigned. I still don't have a name for the segment. I mean, I know I call it my unsigned showcase or independent band showcase. That sounds a bit lame. So you guys think up something for me. Either way, we normally kick off the show by playing the bands that the record labels, the Spotify algorithm and whatnot have yet to discover. I really like that track. I think that they do something very interesting, very unique. And of course, I will post a link to their Bandcamp in the description to the podcast. So if you want to head over there and buy yourself some music, just make sure you let them know who sent you. My friends, I am a member, as many of you may be aware, of the almighty horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, a syndicate of elite content creators dedicated to sound tracking your week from Monday to Sunday. We start on a Monday with the great Brandon Legion bringing you another installment of Horrorwolf 666. Yours truly casts hexes and slays poses every Tuesday on Into the Necrosphere. Next week, Joseph Gigan of the bands Sladir and Verminous Serpent makes his long-form podcasting debut. That episode is already in the can, and I, again, do not think you're going to be disappointed. Joseph is a pretty intense cat. I had a really good time talking to him. But, of course, you will also know, if you check out the news rant every single week, as you religiously should, when he put out the new Sladir record, he said some things about modern black metal that I didn't agree with. So we debated that and spoke about a whole bunch of other things. That's coming your way next week. And then, of course, we're inching closer to episode 250. I'm not quite ready yet to reveal the plans for that episode, but rest assured, it is going to be fucking stacked. On a Wednesday, we have Sensei Mike Hill bringing you the long-running Everything Went Black. Sensei Mike Hill, of course, the frontman for Tombs and Scorpion Throne, amongst other projects. He seems to be adding to the catalog with every passing month. But a podcast that's always great value. He's a fantastic artist, so make sure you check that one out. We also double up your pleasure every other Wednesday when Cheyenne of the band Tribax brings you Iblis Manifestations. He and I both had Necro Butcher of Mayhem on the podcasts, or our various podcasts, over the course of the last week. Where else are you going to hear two 90-minute plus conversations with an absolute legend of legends like that, but in the company of the Horsemen? On a Thursday, we've got the returning Sensei Mike Hill, and then we've got him joined by his co-hosts, Sheriff Mike Scandato and Professor Jeff Kashid, for Necromaniacs, one of the best podcasts of the week. A certain highlight, one I never miss. They review old and new horror movies, and it just helps you get the weekend set up, as far as what you're going to watch, what you're going to spend your time doing. We also have 2 days of the Soul Knox podcast, Thursday and Sunday. That is presented by the Reverend Carl Hikara, the Sinister Minister, a man who takes you on a curated journey through the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric. And if you like the Sinister Minister, you know, of course, that he's been a guest host on the News Rant on many an occasion and will be on many more. The News Rant will be a solo endeavor this week, but I am going to be talking about new tracks by Abduction, Ante-Inferno, and a bunch of others. So once I'm done talking to Simon, don't go anywhere, because there's more to come. And then, of course, if you are new to the podcast, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button. One thing you can do to really help me is to leave me a 5-star review on Spotify, on Apple, or wherever you consume the podcast on. And then, of course, you can head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store, buy yourself a t-shirt or a hoodie. It's probably hoodie weather now that it's starting to get a little cold. I still run around in a vest and a tank top, but that's because I'm a man's man. Speaking of men's men, I'm about to welcome one of the very best. This is Simon Lucas of Winterfylleth. Dude, I'm really glad we're finally getting to talk. I know we've kind of been meaning to do it for a while. We always seem to sort of be running past each other and, waving hello. But finally we're able to speak. First of all, as I saw you just had a swig of whatever you've got there, let me raise a glass to you. Congratulations on a very successful album launch, I think.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's been a bit crazy. It kind of all of a sudden was upon us, and the reception's been somewhat overwhelming, really, all in all. been amazing and kind of bowled over by a lot of the reviews we've had. Just really glad that it's resonating so much with people. Yeah, glad that people are enjoying it. It was a really kind of personal album for us that took a long time to kind of come to fruition, thanks to small matter of pandemics and things like that. But yeah, no, chuffed to bits with how it's been received so far.
I did touch on some of this when I had Chris and I had Nick on the podcast, but I'm gonna, anybody who watched that episode will just need to indulge me because I'm keen to get your perspective as well. But
yeah,
it really felt to me in the build up to this record, like there was. I mean, I've been following you guys really since I think probably about the Threnody of Triumph. I think that's when I kind of clocked onto the band properly and I started paying attention. But this to me felt like there was more positive energy and more momentum behind the band than I'd ever seen for any of your records previously. Reckoning Dawn is obviously an interesting one because it came out around in a time where I think people's consumption of music was just different. But this one there was just a feeling behind it, like this was going to be something quite big, and it seems thus far to have turned out that way. I'm curious to get your experience of it being in the band and kind of seeing things unfold as a member of Winterfylleth.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think we would have had a similar kind of momentum for the Reckoning Dawn. That was obviously scuppered by coming out literally a month after the COVID outbreak started. So we were kind of really disheartened by how well prepared we were for that, and how much work we'd done towards that album to have it basically just come out at that time and it feel just like a bit of a waste. I mean, obviously everyone else was in the same situation. Not that we need to go on about that time any longer, because it was the same for everybody. But yeah, it's we've as Chris and Nick probably mentioned when you spoke to them, we've managed to keep a pretty regular, consistent kind of release schedule since we started, really. Since around 2006, we've always put a record out every 2 years, almost without fail, pretty much. Sometimes more than that. And this is the longest gap we've had since putting a record out, 4 years, and that felt really strange, just to have no activity for the last almost 18 years of my life. We've continually been working on new music. We're always working on new music in the background, and we've always got something being planned to come out. And I think maybe this time, this album has benefited in, maybe I notice you're drinking a nice red there. I know you're a fan of fine wine there, Jackie.
I most definitely am, mate.
Yeah, maybe I'm not saying our album is akin to a fine wine, but it maybe needed a bit more time to, mature in a nice oak, barrel,
Mm-hmm.
as it has done for an additional
12
2
months
years.
in the oak casket.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. We took our time making sure that everything was absolutely perfect for this album. This album was actually supposed to come out a little earlier than it did, but we went through such an up and down kind of mix sort of period for this album that we weren't really overly happy with the first couple of mixes that we got back. Spent a bit of time remixing it, going back and forwards to Wales where we record, and just to get it exactly right, because there was just something not sitting quite right with the first mix, and I think it was worth taking the time to do that, because I mean I feel like it's probably the best production we've had, and that certainly seems to be a theme with many of the reviews that have come out about the record. I think we've always had decent production, but this production for the Imperious Horizon has been on just another notch up the kind of the quality ladder, so to speak. And I'm really chuffed with the production. The guys Chris Fielding and Mark Manette, who mastered the record. They did an amazing job and took a really kind of scientific approach. One of the things I really love about both those guys is that they are kind of geeky engineers. They're real scientists about their craft, and they take their craft really seriously. And that really came through in the production for this record. So it feels a really kind of satisfying record to put out for me. I think I think it was the best kind of studio performances that any of us had ever given before musically. The music that we wrote for this record had much more going on musically. And I think we really pushed ourselves on this one. I feel it's the best I've ever performed in the studio. I'm just really pleased with the outcome. And yeah, it's my favorite record we've put out.
You mentioned the first mix being, not really up to snuff. Was Chris wasn't involved in that? I'm going to assume.
As in Chris
Fielding, yeah.
Chris Fielding. Yeah, he was, but it's an interesting thing. So we tracked the album in Foal Studio, which is in Winterfylleth in Mid Wales. Hopefully, I've pronounced that correctly, and your Welsh listeners will probably tell me to.
Oh, mate, you guys are in trouble. I'm always really spot on with all my pronunciations of every.
I'm sure.
Everywhere. So. No, I've got a, probably self-imposed reputation, but I just lean into it. I'm like, guys, if it's not English, there's a very good chance I'm going to fuck it up. So, if you want to name your band something, Norwegian or particularly French, which I'm especially bad at, it's not my problem if I mispronounce it.
Let's not do some outrageous French accents now, but
definitely not. No,
but no. So Chris has built his own mixing studio in his house. So we tracked it all in Foal, and I think Chris won't mind me saying it just took us, because our music is so layered. There's so many layers of guitar tracks in the mix. When you start adding layers of synth and vocals on top of the drums and guitars and bass, there's a lot of the same frequency levels within all of that instrumentation that is fighting for space in the audio spectrum. And I know obviously you're being an audiophile yourself, these are things that are very important to you. And we felt like we weren't getting much separation between the instrumentation, and obviously with our music, we're trying to achieve something akin to the epic. We're trying to write music that takes people to the mountaintops and makes them feel that they're in a resplendent epic place. And we just felt like the mix was a bit kind of muddy and a bit woolly, and we weren't hearing much separation. And so we really wanted to get that right. We weren't just going to settle for that. Maybe some bands would have just settled for that, but we weren't just going to put it out for the sake of it. So we took our time to really dig down into why that was, and it was a matter of certain frequencies that are occurring within the guitars are in exactly the same range as the synths, and it was just making it all blend into one and give this kind of muddy woolen sound with no separation. And when you listen to a record, you want to hear the separation of all the instrumentation, even within the guitars. You want to hear the lead guitars are separate to what's going on rhythmically. And so we worked with Chris for quite a few months to work out which frequencies we needed to take out. We actually took a lot of frequencies out of the mix, and that enabled everything to just have that separation that we've now achieved. That also involved working with Mark Manette, who mastered the record at his studio in Manchester. Mark's obviously well known for doing a lot of great records by bands like My Dying Bride and so forth. And
so he's used to working with bands that tend to have a pretty layered sound in any case.
Yeah, exactly. And I know it's not necessarily the most obvious kind of connection to us musically, but there is something of that sound, that sound of the kind of West Yorkshire classic British doom, contingent from the early 90s, your Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, there is some of that sound that creeps into what we do. And I think having somebody who records a lot of that music be involved in the recording process was extremely beneficial to the production process. And I know Chris Fielding felt like it was just a nice sort of match to have the record recorded and engineered by himself and then mastered by Mark. It seemed to work really well, and they're both really good friends of they're close friends of the band. They know exactly how a Winterfylleth record should sound, and that is obviously massively important to us because we've worked with them both. We've actually worked with Mark Minette as a front of house engineer on tour before, so he knows the band well.
There's definitely a benefit, I think, in having somebody master your record, or at least be involved in the mastering, who's used to producing you live, or used to mixing your sound live. Because I've heard other bands talk about this specifically as well, and there's some guys that'll have that particular individual go with them on every single tour, and then they will also make sure that person's in the studio with them. They just seem to understand and know I wouldn't say the quirks, but just the kind of kinks in your sound, like those little things to look out for, those frequencies. I actually didn't know until you just brought it up now. I was going to ask you about it. How do you create that separation in the soundscape? Because obviously I guess it's a little bit like producing wine. I know what wine I like. I know what sound I like when I've got music on the hi-fi. I like very airy production. I like dark throne production as well. I like whatever services the music, but if I'm listening to something that I want to hear from a kind of audiophile perspective, I like that very expansive soundstage, and that soundstage, it almost feels like it envelops you. You mentioned Paradise Lost. I mean, they, to me, have set a pretty high standard for that on some of their last records. I'd say the most recent, My Dying Bride, has a phenomenal production job. But yeah, I was curious around if you know, and I know you've already touched on it, but the technicality around creating that space between the instruments.
Well, apart from, as I was saying earlier, it's a case of where frequencies are merging and blending in. It's a matter of really going in depth into. I'm no audio engineer, so I'm probably going to absolutely butcher this.
Yeah. Well, you're going to do a better job of it than I would, but also I think you can probably translate it into something that me and everybody listening will understand.
Sure. Yeah. So where you've got the guitars at a certain frequency, and the synths are in that same frequency, and the vocals may well be in that range as well, and then certain elements of the drums are in there, like the kick drums, for example, and the toms, cymbals, so forth. They're all in that same mid-range kind of pocket, and it's a case of really investigating in depth into that spectrum, that narrow band in the middle, which frequencies you can take out and not lose anything that's going to sound dramatically like, well, where's that gone, where's that instrument gone, but take out certain aspects of the frequency that just allow other elements that make that instrument identifiable shine through on top of another one, and then finding the unique, the kind of outstanding unique elements of each frequency that are going to stand out for each instrument, and take out the unnecessary frequencies that are blending and merging. That's the kind of very basic layman's term explanation of that. But it's also a case of as simple as in the studio, different guitar parts using a different amplifier for, using a different guitar head for Russ's lead parts, as to, the head that Chris might use a more abrasive guitar tone for the rhythm parts through a certain head, normally like a PV XXX or a 5150. and then Russ might be going through a cleaner sounding Marshall head that's got a slightly high gain kind of, but almost cleaner, warmer tone to let those lead parts really kind of shimmer through on the top. And it's just making those kind of choices in the studio as well. If everything's recorded on the same guitar head, it's gonna sound. You're gonna have an even worse problem. Everything's gonna be blending in. That's pretty much it from my perspective. I think in terms of how to get that separation, it's something we're always thinking about as soon as we set foot in the studio. It gets to be a bit of a problem when you're recording the drums. From my perspective as a drummer, you want a big cavernous drum sound. I always like, as do most people, that the Mysterious Dom Satana style drum sound, with cavernous toms, and that really natural reverb. But that can bring with it problems as well when you're bringing reverb into the mix, and reverb's blending into sounds. It gets tricky, but drum sound wise, I was really pleased with the results on this album. It was almost one of the things that we got bang on immediately. Chris really knew what we were going for, and it was the first thing that we all said, wow, drums are perfect, don't touch them anymore. And that was that. The drums, we apart from a bit of the usual editing and mixing that goes into the drum process, we just managed to. The studio we record in Foal sounds great anyway. It's got an amazing live room. It's a really nice environment to record music. I don't know if Chris or Nick spoke to you much about
they touched on it, yeah.
But it's a studio that's really special to us. We recorded the Mercian Sphere and Threnody of Triumph there, and the Reckoning Dawn. We had a bit of a gap in between where Chris was at a different studio. But there's something really kind of special about Foal. It's in this 400-year-old stone barn in the middle of Wales, where there's, the nearest neighbour is a mile away. The nearest village is, I think it's 7 miles away. You've got a forest behind the studio. There used to be a painting of Stonehenge in the drum room, which was the guy that built the studio, Dave Anderson. Was in Hawkwind for a bit. He was in various prog bands like Amandul, the Groundhogs. So it's a really kind of rustic old studio with a design to have that really nice big reverby sound. It's got a vaulted ceiling in the live room, so sound naturally has that kind of it's got quite a big natural sound to it anyway. It's just a nice place to be and create music. You can kind of lock yourself away there for 2 weeks and just forget about the outside world. And I think we've actually been snowed in there twice, which was a fantastic experience. I'm
about to say it works for your style of music particularly well.
Absolutely, snowed in, ciders in the fridge, and let's just make an album. It's a rather long-winded answer to your original question.
No, long-winded works perfectly for this format, mate. As I'm sure you know. I mean, there is absolutely nothing worse than doing a podcast and everything is kind of single sentence answers, or even worse, single word answers. You kind of find your eye drawn to the clock in the corner, and you're like, it says 5 minutes. It feels like it's been 50 minutes. So it's a good one when you you don't look at the clock, or when you do look at the clock, you go, Jesus Christ, what the fuck happened there? How did time pass by so quickly?
Well, don't speak too soon, Jackie. Don't speak too soon.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I'm based on the first 15, 20 minutes. I'm reasonably confident we'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll be fine. I can talk for England, so
I wanted to ask, more out of curiosity than anything else, if you didn't have this studio in Wales as an option, where would be your dream studio anywhere in the world to go and record?
As in existing studio?
Existing studio. Well, it could be a studio that possibly doesn't exist anymore, but existing studio. Where would you love to record Winterfylleth?
I'd love to record in. There's a studio in. I think I'm not sure on the exact location. I think it's in Lincolnshire. Called. I think it's called Chapel Studios.
What does that sound so familiar?
It's where I'm pretty sure that loads of I may have even had some Paradise Lost stuff go through.
I was just about to say I may be wrong, but I'm thinking that's a former Paradise Lost.
I'm pretty sure it is. The engineer and producer there is a guy called Simon. Oh, his surname's completely escaped me, but he, our producer Chris, is a big fan of him, and I'm pretty sure he learned a lot of his trade through some seminars with him when he was studying many years ago. What's his name? Simon
Effamy.
Simon Effamy, that's the one.
Yeah. Simon Effamy, and he has recorded. Jesus Christ, it's a very serious lineup. So. Yeah. Napalm Death, Me Took Seed, Pantera, Deceased, The Exploited, Pitch Shifter, Crowbar. I mean, best of the best.
Yeah.
Paradise Lost, also best of the best. Yeah. So that's a very very serious lineup of bands.
Yeah. So he also they record in the studio. Crippled Black Phoenix.
Yes. Yeah.
Justin Greaves, who formerly of Iron Monkey fame.
I'm a very big fan of Crippled Black Phoenix. I've had Justin and Belinda on the podcast for Johnny the Boy.
We you did, of course. Yeah. Those guys are great. We spent 2 weeks on tour with Justin when we toured with Galsveed. Justin was guitar teching for Galsveed, and Chris and I are both like massive Iron Monkey nerds, and we're both massively into Justin's old like hardcore power violence grind band, Hard to Swallow. I don't know if that's a band you're familiar with.
Hard to Swallow, I can't remember, but Iron Monkey I know very well. I actually spoke to him about it a fair bit when he was on.
Yeah.
So yeah, our problem, I think, is just one of the gnarliest records to ever be conceived.
Do you know what? I'm not even a massive fan of that genre of music, but Iron Monkey were like the best band of that genre that ever existed, and it's one of those genres where, because I'm not entirely wedded to the genre, it's like, well, you don't need another band in that genre. Iron Monkey basically tick all the boxes. They were the most kind of visceral, aggressive band to ever exist. Some of the stories about that band are outrageous. They really are. Some of the stuff.
So I got to know Justin as a musician on Iron Monkey, and I remember when he started Crippled Black Phoenix, he was starting it with a guy that I say I used to be friends with, because for various reasons I decided that he wasn't somebody I wanted to I didn't want to associate with anymore. We started with a guy called Calder Matter. And when I heard Crippled Black Phoenix the first time, I couldn't fucking believe it. I mean, it's such a
great band.
It's such a musically diverse band, they do so many different things. I actually have got to say, though, I love what they've become more so than what they were. Yeah. I think what they've evolved into on their last, 3-4 records is really something very, very special. And in my opinion, actually very underappreciated.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, they're a very unique band. They conjure a great kind of uncanny atmosphere. They're really unusual. I really like them. It's, Justin's one of these kind of tortured geniuses. I think musically, he's got some great ideas, and I know he can be a somewhat divisive figure. I know he won't mind me saying that, but any of my interactions that I've had with him have been great. He was fantastic to spend time with on the road.
And what I will say as well, and I'm saying this in the shadow of probably the most political conversation I've ever recorded for the podcast with Cheyenne that dropped a couple of days ago. It'll be a few weeks by the time people see this, but Justin and I differ on so many things, and every time I've spoken to him, we've gone on like gangbusters. He's a great example of somebody who you can differ from substantially, and you can always have an interesting conversation with, and not just an interesting conversation, but a positive conversation. And then I will also just throw in as an aside, I think Belinda Cordick is one of the fucking best vocalists on the face of the earth. I mean, like take gender out of the equation, she's incredible. If you then kind of say, okay, let's create a gender divide when it comes to metal vocalists. Her clean vocals, and especially like that fucking rasp that she uses on Johnny the Boy, is as my friend Ralph would say, chef's kiss.
yeah, she's phenomenal. Yeah, superb. Yeah, big fan of that stuff. So yeah, they and to take that back, they record all their stuff in Chapel Studios. I think it's called Chapel, isn't it? It's Chapel.
Yeah, it is called Chapel Studios. I absolutely can see it now as well, because I didn't realize that they record their stuff there. But, again, you talk about a band that has this very vast kind of sumptuous soundscape when you listen to their records, especially the new ones. I mean, Cripple Black Phoenix has that in spades.
Absolutely, yeah. It certainly does. Yeah. Really like their newest stuff. It's great. Yeah, I remember hearing it and messaging Justin straight away. Wow, this is fantastic stuff. So if anybody's listening that isn't familiar with it, then I'd wholeheartedly urge you to check it out, and obviously check out those older bands if you're not familiar. I know they were all bands that were kind of before that internet age where you could easily find stuff online. Maybe it's quite nice that Hard to Swallow is still something that's not really easily findable online, because that band was something else.
What's funny is the Our Problem was produced by Andy Sneap. As we're on the topic of producers, I mean, Andy Sneap, I was, for a period of time, I always felt like he was a little bit too polished. I didn't actually realize until recently now, and in fact, not recently, now, that he had done the Iron Monkey album. But I remember hearing A New Darkness Upon Us by Stamping Ground, and I'd seen them live so many times up to that record being released. I loved them live. It took me a while to get into that record. Nowadays, when I listen to it, I'm like, this is fucking fantastic. Like, every band should have been, produced by Andy Sneap.
It was definitely,
but at the time, it wasn't as rough as what I had expected, having seen them play live so many times.
Yeah, I grew up very close to where Stamping Ground were based from, so they were a band that I would see regularly when I was a teenager growing up in Worcestershire. They're based just like 15 miles down the road from me, and we'd always see them in the back room of pubs and so forth. And I remember finding out that they were produced by Andy Sneap. I was like, well, that makes total sense when you hear their records. It's got that archetypal Andy Sneap production, doesn't it? And Andy Sneap, we've actually played a few shows with Andy Sneap when he spent a bit of time playing in Hell. The kind of new wave of British heavy metal band that had a bit of a resurgence. We did a tour with Primordial and Hell, played a few shows around the UK. And then they invited us to play a show with them in Derby many years ago, over 10 years ago now. But Andy's a lovely guy, really nice guy to just hang out with. And I mean, now look at him, he's playing in Judas Priest,
which is wild. Just a reflection on Stamping Ground. Anyone who missed that band in their prime missed out big time. If you're listening to this and you never got to see Stamping Ground, you need to feel some degree of FOMO, because I'm sorry, that was they were one of the most intense live bands I've ever seen in my life. And you knew the fucking second that Adam walked on stage, and he was always, when he was younger especially, he was really muscle bound, and he'd always be there shirtless with his just the three quarters on. When he stands there and he does the crucifix stance, and you just see the kind of the lights are sort of shining on him, so you just see the muscled exterior. You just know bones are going to break. I with the exception of Biohazard, I have seen at Stamping Ground shows so many people carried out by paramedics out of the audience. It's fucking insane.
Yeah, Yeah, they were of that era when bands of that style genuinely sounded evil, and you know that for me that was the attraction of those bands. I haven't, you know, a lot of bands from that kind of neck of the woods just they don't sound, you know what I mean? They don't sound.
But their music literally sounds like it's written to fuck you up. I mean, it sounds like if you were to analyze their songs. So they're on my gym playlist, so I listen to these songs almost every single day. So if I listen to a track like "Pain is Weakness Leaving the Body," everything about that song is written. You can tell very clearly with a live experience in mind. It's like, okay, here's how we build up to the breakdown. Here's how we get people fired up for the breakdown. And then, you know, when I think back to the time seeing them, I mean, that's exactly how they used to do it. You know, they would have like that build up, and then, you know, Adam is yelling at the audience, or he's starting a wall of death, or I can't remember what song it was, but I saw him do this a couple of times at the Mean Fiddler. The Mean Fiddler used to have the speaker stack that went pretty close to the roof. I mean, it was, for anyone that went to that venue, it was it was a really tall speaker stack. He climbed on top of that and dove into the audience multiple times. Yeah, it was like, I remember one show, I think he did it on the second song. It was just like, I think they started off with something, maybe I think the first song off New Darkness Upon Us, then they did Behind the Light. And as soon as that song happened, and they had the breakdown, which is, you know, the real like, you know, 4/4 groove that they do. You just saw him come flying over into the crowd. Oh, dude, it was. I get so fucking happy when I think about those days, because I feel so fortunate that I had the chance to see that.
Yeah, it was a time, you know, that is really lost. Really, I mean, like that, those kind of bands, then that kind of metal hardcore crossover thing sounded way different back then to what it became. It became, I mean, I have no interest in what it became shortly after that. But those bands, they you know, they sounded more like Teutonic thrash bands than like what you would term as metal hardcore crossover of the last 15 years or so. It was way more evil sounding. It was way more violent in terms of its musicality, and it just in the kind of lineage of that kind of music, it was just way more connected to like 80s Teutonic thrash and like early death metal. It had way more in common with that stuff than any of the kind of polished, I don't even know what to call it nowadays.
Well, I'll tell you something, and this is, you know, it's in the current climate, not a politically correct thing to say, but part of why it was great, it was deeply connected to masculinity. It had a incredibly masculine feel to it. And I remember one of my favorite live experiences ever was Eastpak Resistance in December 2002, and it was Stamping Ground, then Hatebreed, then Agnostic Front, then Biohazard. I mean, there was so much testosterone in that building that it nearly lifted the roof off the place. But the level of insanity in that fucking crowd when Biohazard was playing, I've never seen anything like it in my life. Never. Not at a Slayer show, not at any. I have never seen a crowd go so off. And it was actually not just for Biohazard, it was all four bands in a row. It was as soon as, like, you know, there were some bands playing and people were into it, but when Stamping Ground went on stage, they kind of set the tone, and that was the rest of the night. It wasn't Woodstock 99, but it was about as close as you could get to that inside the forum, you know, without the misbehavior, the deviant misbehavior of Woodstock 99.
Yeah. I think I saw that tour in a sports hall in Gloucester.
Which is the perfect place for it, you know. You need space to move around.
Yeah. Or was it Bristol? I can't remember. It was a long time ago. I would have only been 18, something like that at that time. But it was certainly a different time for that kind of genre. Shortly after that, I think that genre kind of lost its way.
Yeah. As soon as they started introducing the clean singing and all the, you know, as soon as the genre decided that they wanted to be quote unquote more inclusive, they just it just turned to shit.
Yeah,
And I've got no issue. I mean, hardcore to me has always been inclusive. It's never been a genre that's been there to exclude people. But it was like there was an intentional softening of everything, and an intentional. I mean, I don't know who told them that they're going to get more radio play or whatever the case may be. But the bands just weren't. They weren't doing that real knuckle dragging caveman, fuck you up kind of music, which that is what I love. And I continually go back to that. I mean, my whole entire gym playlist is just full of that.
But you know what? I know we're not supposed to talk about it, but it's the same thing. We've seen the same thing in black metal over the last 20 years, haven't we? I know Dial talks about it a lot. He's a very thoughtful guy, thinks critically, and this music isn't designed for everybody. It is what it is, and it should just be allowed to stay that way. And I don't think that should be a problem. Black metal has seen a watering down over the last 20 years, which has just completely destroyed that mystique and that authenticity about it that first attracted us all to the genre whenever we all got into it. And there should be that mystique, that element of danger that comes along with black metal, and I think the same can be said for that kind of metal hardcore crossover back in the late 90s, early 2000s. There's a similar kind of trend there, I think. Just a watering down, and this music isn't for everybody, and
I agree,
and it shouldn't be for everybody, and we're fine with that. We don't need to be having a discussion as to who that's for. It can resonate with anybody. It can.
There should never be a point at which black metal has a conversation with itself. It's like it was never. It was never meant to be that type of genre. It was you need to go back to the roots of how the genre was created. It was created by societal misanthropic misfits that really wanted nothing to do with any form of mainstream acceptance whatsoever. I mean, I would imagine. I had Necro Butcher on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about, you can tell he doesn't mind the fact that more people listen, but he definitely still has the same mentality when it comes to writing music, and when it comes to what his vision of mayhem needs to be. I would imagine someone like Euronymous would probably be fucking livid at the fact that the band is so popular now that they could have production on stage. Like, how dare you? This is completely against the ethos.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, who knows? Who knows what he might think nowadays? But it's funny, isn't it? Because like in some ways, that approach. How's best to word this? It shouldn't be. It isn't exclusionary along any kind of definitive lines of identity, so to speak, if you know what I mean. It shouldn't be exclusionary like that, and it isn't. I genuinely don't think it is. But it should be exclusionary along the lines of, do you get it or not?
Yes, I agree.
You know what I mean?
I think that's a really good way to articulate it as well.
Yeah, it's really important to me, and this music is really important to anyone. You don't just get into this music. You have to really, it has to really speak to that place beyond the mind. It has to really kind of resonate with you, and has to really mean something to you. It's not something that you see a lot of casual black metal listeners nowadays, and that's fine. There's always going to be those people, but for me, black metal should be an absolute, it's almost like devotional religion to me. And then that may sound silly when I'm sat in this living room of this, I'm in an Airbnb in Scotland right now. And I don't look particularly mysterious shrouded in this.
You don't have the black candles flickering in the background.
Yeah. But it's a genre that we've all devoted most of our lives to by this point. I mean, I'm in my early 40s now, and I've devoted the best part of my life to this genre. And I mean, devoted myself to it as have all the other members of Winterfylleth. You know, it means everything to us. It really does. And with that comes a devotion to authenticity as well. And authenticity is such a crucial thing in many genres of music to me. Most of all with black metal, and I've spoken about this quite a lot in interviews, but that authentic atmosphere is the most critical element of black metal to me. And if there isn't that authenticity, then I'm not interested. And there are sadly a lot of bands that, you know, I feel aren't the authentic article and are not necessarily a parody of what the genre is, but it's maybe not as devotional and serious as it should be. And that's not to me.
It doesn't treat the subject matter and the art with the level of seriousness it deserves. I think something that I was thinking about while you were talking, I think that what black metal can never be is something that becomes very self-conscious. It has to be a very natural, almost subconscious expression of the this is going to sound very pretentious, but you know, of the artist's inner state, like they're in a mind. I mean, you know, if you think about Transylvanian Hunger, you know, there's nothing self-conscious or self-aware about that whatsoever. All of the Burzum records are the same. Most of the best Marduk records are like that. Mayhem is like that. So there has to be something that is, it can never be self-aware. It can never be consciously trying to sound evil or consciously trying to sound a certain way. It needs, and so there I'll definitely agree with you, because I see a lot of that in the modern scene. My only counter to that would be, I would say there's so much in the modern scene right now. You can, as a fan, quite easily just ignore a whole swathe of bands and focus on stuff like, I mean, if I think about newer bands that are fantastic, I say newer, they've been around for a while, but Ecclese, Selbst, Panzerfaust, you know, the list goes on. There was another band that I discovered the other day, Deathless Void. I think they're called Deathless Void. Bands like that. You know, so there's a lot of interesting stuff that's either coming out or newer bands that are doing great things. Yeah, but I do absolutely agree. There's a lot of fucking bullshit.
Yeah, and it's that kind of oversaturation that you have to kind of seep through the murk to get to the really special stuff. And you're right, there is plenty of that special stuff being made. You know, right up to the present day, there's plenty of incredible bands. It's the new Deathlike Mass album that's just come out is one that really strikes that gong. I think like you were just describing, it's the difference between music just being, you know, throwaway and music that really makes you, you know, you get those tingles up your arm or those tingles up the back of your neck, that invoke some other like deep-seated feeling. That's the difference between authentic black metal and the stuff that's just, you know, maybe not quite so authentic. I don't know how else to put it, but or maybe black metal that's not quite so sincere in its approach. For me, it's really important to have that sincerity and that authenticity. And, you know, I want to listen to music that resonates with me, that's going to, you know, make the hairs on my arm stand up and go, you know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And again, you know, I go back and I think about my experience of Inferno. I know you guys were there as well. I mean, that really, one of the things I loved about that is that really felt to me like a celebration of the genre, and not just that I love, but as I love it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's like all of the best stuff about the genre was present there. Even though, you know, it wasn't all my favorite bands that were on stage, there was just something about the way that it was presented and the experience that I had being there that felt to me like this is everything that I love about the genre is present here. And I don't know whether you're planning on going next year, but fucking hell, man, that lineup is getting beefier and beefier by the day.
Yeah, I briefly saw it the other day. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I remember thinking, yeah, it's looking pretty good. It was it was, and this year, I know what you mean. It was an okay lineup this year. There was some amazing bands on the bill. It wasn't maybe through and through amazing bands the entire bill, but there was still like an atmosphere there, wasn't there? I know exactly what you mean. There was like just a spirit there that was like, it was a pretty wild festival, to be honest. We won't talk about some of the other stories that I've heard.
I know of one story that involves the swimming pool at like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. It was a pretty rock and roll festival by all accounts. Yeah. I was asleep in bed. It wasn't me.
And I'd get my penis cut off if I were not asleep in bed. So I tread lightly when it comes to those sorts of things. But I mean, this year, Behemoth, I don't care about. Satyricon, I don't care. I don't like the new Satyricon stuff, but either way, I was actually on board with Satyricon all the way up to the self-titled album. Abath, I want to see just for nostalgia. 1349, brilliant. Rotten Christ, brilliant live. Septic Flesh, brilliant live. Patushka, don't care about. Tudor, I can take or leave. Or Noir, very excited about that. I was very curious about them including Kylesa. I mean, I like Kylesa, but I wouldn't exactly call them black metal.
I guess it's that Inferno tend to have a small element of eclectic, a kind of more eclectic lineup. They have a few non-black metal bands, I guess. Ticking that box.
That slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
Necrophobic, Eternus, Gadaba, Godheim's God, Nagelfar, Spectral Wound.
I tell you what, I recently saw Dodheim's Guard at Cosmic Void Festival in London, and I've never got the chance to see Dodheim's Guard at all for whatever reason, and they were an absolute highlight of Cosmic Void. They were absolutely
fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I really love that band. I really love their newest record. Black Medium Current is an incredible record, phenomenal record. Particularly as an audio, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but
you know what? There's been so many people that have told me to check it out, and but again, they've exactly what you're about to say. If you're an audiophile, you need to listen to it, and I've just never gotten around to it.
Vikotnik is a bit of a musical genius, I think, and he's completely crazy. He started halfway through their set at Cosmic Void on the stage at the Electric Ballroom. He started smashing the microphone stand into the stage really aggressively, just out of nowhere. And he's just smashing it repeatedly. And then one of the stagehands actually had to run on, and as he was like this with the stand, he just had the stand taken out of his arms.
One thing I am extremely jealous about, as you were talking about Cosmic Void, I don't know whether you stuck around for this, but I'm so jealous about you seeing Samael do Ceremony of Opposites. I mean, beyond that, it gets a little dull for me. Their discography, but Blood Ritual and Ceremony of Opposites, what fucking genius records.
Do you know what? I've got to be honest. I was a bit disappointed with their set, to be honest.
How come?
It just didn't really. It just felt a bit flat to me. I was looking forward to it. I really wanted to enjoy it. I went. I watched it with the. It was sadly just one of those times where you're just disappointed by a band that you really want to see. So maybe it was an off show for them, but it was a good fest all in all. Hold Rife were really good. I don't know if you've seen them before.
I've never seen them live, but I love the band. Absolutely love them. Yeah,
superb band. Yeah.
Samael, I'm gonna waver a guess. I'm actually just about to see if I can find any footage of it now, but I'm gonna waver a guess and say Zai didn't play. He didn't play drums.
No, he didn't.
That's there's two things that I think are crippling to me when it comes to live shows.
Yeah.
No live drummer. I don't give a fuck if you have if you've got programmed drums on an album, but have a live drummer if you're going to play live, or don't bother playing.
Yeah, I agree. And then they had the percussive elements, but it was all drum machine. As a drummer myself, I obviously always like watching drummers as well. So it was maybe a little flat from that perspective for me.
That doesn't cut the mustard. And then, because that's the one thing you can't replace.
Yeah.
You can have a backing track for a guitar and it sounds fine. I would say vocals and drums, you can never, ever have a backing track on. I've seen bands with backing tracks on the vocals. It sounds atrocious.
Yeah.
And I've seen bands with backing tracks on drums, unacceptable. That, and then when what I really hate, I've mentioned it on the show before, when a vocalist turns their back to the audience between songs. There were a couple of bands that did that at Inferno, and it's inexcusable to me. Like, you're there to perform a show, you're the front man, you're supposed to engage with the audience. That's one of your main jobs. If you're not doing that, you should be on stage.
Yeah, sure.
That's coming from a school of James Hetfield on Live Shit, Binge and Purge. That's the gold standard of being a front man, and that's what I hold everybody up to. If you can't operate that way, then you're not good enough.
Yeah, fair enough.
Again, more out of curiosity than anything else, you said we were talking about drummers. Who are some of your favorite drummers? Who are like the drummers that really kind of get, because you've had the privilege of playing alongside some fucking absolute beasts as well.
Yeah.
But who are some of the guys that inspire you and that get you, get your heart pumping?
Well, you know what? It's funny. When I was first getting into playing drums, I was about 10 years old, so over 30 years ago now. And my dad used to be a DJ back in the 70s. He used to DJ on cruise ships, so he had quite an extensive vinyl collection, which is one of the things that probably helped get me down the kind of avenue of musical interests that my life has taken. But one of the most important drummers for me for just getting into playing drums was Roger Taylor from Queen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that might be a surprise.
No. I mean, I know Queen's music really, really well, because I was also, I mean, kind of like you, I was introduced to that by my parents.
Yeah.
But he's not really, when I have people on here, he's not really a guy that always comes up as an influence, and hence why I kind of, was slightly surprised. Yeah,
maybe not like a direct influence in terms of the way I like to play drums now, but I mean, if it wasn't for Roger Taylor, I'd have never picked up a pair of sticks, I don't think. It was watching back in when Freddie Mercury died. There was this, I don't know if you remember, there was a big tribute concert for him.
The Wembley tribute show.
Yeah. And the lineup for that was ridiculous. It was like Def Leppard, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, David Bowie, various other people, and obviously Queen performing with various different vocalists. And I used to like have that recorded off the telly on VHS. I must have been about, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old, and I used to play it over and over. I wore the tape out. I watched it almost daily, just watching Roger Taylor play drums. And it just fascinated me. It really, really fascinated me. And so I started playing drums soon after that. I had, lessons at school. Mum and Dad were obviously like, oh God, he wants a drum kit. He's got a drum kit in the garage now. And I remember the police knocking on the garage door, down the road.
And this was on the mean streets of Worcester.
Of Worcester, yeah. Middle class Worcester.
Yeah.
Exactly. But no, bringing it right up to the present day, I mean, I had the pleasure to share the stage with some incredible drummers. Most notably, probably Cato Beckervold, who used to play drums in Enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
He was previously in Red Harvest. I don't know if you remember them. Like,
dude, don't even get me started on that band. I'm so obsessed with Red Harvest, and I have bemoaned the fact that they have not made an album for years, and doesn't seem like they ever will. I mean, they said in 2018 on their Facebook page, it kind of seemed like something was going to happen, but nothing did. But I think The Greater Darkness is fucking incredible. I think everything they've done is phenomenal. I love that band. It's such a shame that they're not. I mean, I know they're still listed as active, but they're not doing anything at the moment. They should be fucking destroying stages.
Yeah, they would. I mean, I know Kato, when he left Enslaved, he just had a family and lives fairly northerly in Norway, I think, and wanted to devote his life to his family, which is completely fair enough. Obviously,
you should have told him that's no excuse. Get back with the band.
Well, we did a European tour with Enslaved back in 2013. Spent a month on the road with those guys, and they're the loveliest guys. They really are. And Kato was such a nice guy, and he's always been a massive influence on my drumming in this kind of music. His use of like effect symbols, little splashes and accents on bells and splashes and chinas and things like that has always been really, really important to me. I think, drums aren't obviously the most kind of melodic of instruments, but so it's about making rhythmic tones that you can that lift, that elevate the music and complement what's going on melodically within the band, and those kind of accents, and the ability to create accents with cymbals in the way that Kato did in Enslaved was massive for me playing drums. So Kato was great to spend a month with, and basically I spent the entire month every night just sat behind the drums watching him play drums for an hour and a half every night, which was a real privilege, and what a lovely guy. He actually I mean, this is me talking about authenticity and like sincerity in black metal, which Enslaved have completely, of course, being the legends that they are. But Kato actually, not long after we went on tour with them, he went on Celebrity MasterChef in Norway.
I didn't even realize that they've got Celebrity MasterChef over there.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, Kato is more famous for being a sport fisherman than he is for playing drums in Enslaved.
Wow.
If you look up Kato Bekkevold, he's on the cover of like sea fishing magazines in Norway.
Jesus.
Total legend, an absolute god. The guy is hilarious and just such a lovely guy, really nice guy. And he went on Norwegian MasterChef and did all the interviews in a Winterfylleth shirt. So if you look up the pictures of him on Norwegian MasterChef, he's got one of our shirts on.
That is fucking awesome. And he was with the band
a long time
through a pretty incredible period. I mean, they did some of their best work in my opinion. Issa, genius, Ruin, brilliant, Vertebrae, brilliant. Probably my favorite Enslaved album. Axioma, Ethica, Odini. He was there for that. So he was there for a very
they're real
a very productive time in their career.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, people like to harken back to the much earlier stuff, which is obviously fantastic and legendary. But within Winterfylleth, we all really, really love their era. We all love the early stuff. Obviously, we covered Woden off or Wotan as they called it from Frost, and but their era from like Below the Lights, Issa, Rune, those albums are just absolute magic. Issa particularly for me is just a magical album.
Issa is incredible, absolutely amazing. He left Red Harvest though right as they started making their best stuff. I mean, Highbreed is a decent record. That was the last album he played on. But Cold Dark Matter, masterpiece. Sick, Transit Gloria Mundi. Fuck, I remember hearing that for the first time when I just moved to the UK. I was just gobsmacked by how good it was. And then Internal Punishment Programs was almost better. And then A Greater Darkness came out, and it was kind of like they mixed Neurosis with what they had done previously. And I'm like, it's just, I'll never get over that. Red Harvest is the Mind Hunter of metal. Like I will never get over the fact that Netflix isn't doing another Mindhunter episode or season. I'll never get over Red Harvest not making another record.
They're one of those like rare bands that are quite unique sounding. I mean, it's more akin to, it's like the closest stuff to like the Thorns album or something like that, which is absolutely legendary. And to bring me on to another drummer, obviously Jan Axel Hellhammer has always been a massive influence on me. I
was going to ask you about him, whether you've seen him in action. He's in terms of black metal, he's probably one of my favorites. He's got such a attacking drum style. It's like such a forward, forceful drum style. And actually, funnily enough, Necro Butcher was talking about that and saying the one concern he has is about Hellhammer staying healthy because of how he plays and the fact that he's getting a lot older now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, he's just so unique again in his style. We've had the pleasure of sharing the stage with those guys a couple of times. We know obviously Charles, who plays guitar in Mayhem, is an old friend from the UK. He's from Colchester way originally. He's a close friend of ours. So we've had the pleasure of playing just a few festivals with them over the years, and watching Hellhammer is just always an absolute treat. Particularly his accenting again, like Kato in blast beats can be really, really kind of linear and uniform, but I really like it when blast beats are full of accents and
Dude, you're absolutely speaking my language now, because if there is one thing I can't stand, it's when you have drumming that's got this very sort of monotone, the dude's keeping the beat, but there's no variation. There's nothing there's no spice. It's like eating food without salt. For me, Hellhammer, incredible. Pete Sandoval to me he's like one of the gold standards when it comes to how you perform speedy music and still keep it interesting.
Yeah. I mean, again, Pete Sandoval, if we're talking death metal, he was a very early influence, along with people like Steve Astheim from Deicide, absolute legend. I remember being a young teenager and having one of those old Earache Records sampler VHSs, and the video for Morbid Angel's Rapture was on that, and just like that's always been, because that was like my earliest kind of exposure to like what I see as proper death metal. Rapture's always been my favorite Morbid Angel song since then.
It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. What were your thoughts on Vinnie Paul, out of interest?
Yeah, great. I mean, I was growing up, I was a big Pantera fan. Again, a really, really hard-hitting drummer. And again, a drummer that plays accents. He accentuates everything. And he was a huge influence growing up. I was lucky enough to see Pantera when they toured the UK in 2000, I think it was, or 2001.
Was that for that?
Is the Reinventing Steel?
Yeah, so they were out with Slayer, Static X, and Morbid Angel.
No, it was they were just touring like 2,000 cap venues. It was Pantera and Satyricon and some other band I can't remember.
Fucking brilliant.
Yeah, Satyricon. Me and Nick saw the tour as well, and we always laugh. The Satyr is kind of, I love Satyr being an arrogant elitist. That's how I want. That's what I want from that kind of music. And Satyr standing at the front of the stage in the Civic Hall in Wolverhampton. And he spots two guys in dark throne shirts at the front. And he's like, "This goes out to the guys in the dark throne shirts, dark throne." And then he's like, to the rest of the crowd, he's like, "I know that to some of you, this will be the most extreme thing you've ever seen. It is akin to when I first heard Rain in Blood." And then they just go into whatever they're going into. I think they must be touring for.
That would have been Rebel Extravaganza, because they brought Volcano out in like 2002, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, Vinnie Paul to me was a guy. I mean, he didn't just do accents, on like one drum. Every single fucking part of that drum kit was used. Yeah. Like the last part, I don't know how well you'll record it, but the last part of Slaughtered, for example, or Far Beyond Driven, that bit where Phil's like screaming "Do Sin," and it's this incredible groove, but he's doing these weird rolls on the double bass. It's like it's so fucking cool.
Yeah, the triplets amidst, like, he's rolling in 4 on the kicks, but then playing triplets within that, which Great. Yeah. It sounds
absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Great.
What are you doing on the mean streets of Edinburgh?
So I'm just north of Edinburgh. I'm up in, I can't even pronounce the name of the place. It's in Fife near Dunfermline, and sort of over towards St Andrews Way. I'm just up here with work. Yeah. So
okay.
Filming some stuff for a client up here. So we've the clients like hired out this Airbnb that we're filming in, and staying here as well. Cheaper than getting a hotel, obviously. You can use it as a location and stay here. So
I didn't realize they shoot a lot of porno in
You're gonna say that. I was waiting for that. No, it's definitely not that. If I told you what it's actually for, you'd cringe. You'd be like, having said that, you don't want to know what it's actually for.
No, I actually have a rough idea what it's for, but I consciously asked you the question because I wanted to have a smooth segue into talking about the documentary that you very kindly shared with me, the Life Over Death piece that you did. Firstly, I didn't realize that you do this for a living, but it's such a I'm a big film buff, and I'm also I dabble very minimally with video editing, but I love it, and I at various points wanted to do something as a kind of sideline hustle with it, but never came so far. But it's a beautifully shot, beautifully edited, and beautifully put together documentary. Just for people that haven't seen it, because there'll be quite a few of those folks, can you just kind of give a synopsis of what it's about?
Yeah, so in the city that I grew up in, Worcester, there is a medieval cathedral there that dates back to the late Saxon period. And when I was growing up, I was about 17, 18 years old, and I had an old book of ghost stories from the city. And I love the cathedral. It's one of England's most beautiful cathedrals. It's got some fascinating history to it. The medieval King John is buried there. Prince Arthur is buried there. There's a beautiful cloister, which has got a few ghost stories attached to it. Supernatural kind of fiction has always been a bit of an interest of mine, and authors like M.R. James, Arthur Machen, that kind of thing. And reading this book of local folklore and local ghost stories, there was a little bit of history about the cathedral in there. It was no more than like a short paragraph that said that next to the cathedral, under one of the adjoining buildings, was a forgotten, hidden crypt filled with thousands of human bones. An old ossuary, as we now know they are, or a charnel house. The charnel house is a very common place across mainland Europe, mainly Catholic countries, as it was originally a Catholic practice. People believed that their earthly remains had to be kept in consecrated grounds to ascend to heaven after the Last Judgment in their belief system. And after England went through the Reformation in the 1500s, when Henry VIII decided he obviously wanted a few more wives than he'd had originally, and decided to change from the Catholic tradition to the Protestant tradition, the idea of purgatory and ghosts went completely out the window overnight, as the Protestant faith became the prevailing narrative. And with that, charnel houses also went out the window. So at one time, England would have had charnel houses in pretty much most places. And they were all lost. They were all ruined, destroyed, and so forth. And there are only now 4 remaining charnel houses in the whole of the United Kingdom. Some of which were known about, some of which you can go and visit. Rothwell in Northamptonshire, St Leonard's in Hythe in Kent, you can go and visit. It's a really beautiful ossuary, as is the one in Rothwell. I'd highly recommend people go. Anyone can go and visit those places. And they'll be greeted with very neatly stacked arches of thousands of human skulls, it's quite something to behold. If people probably visited ossuaries in Europe, which are generally very dramatic, and having visited a lot of them, they're always very kind of overwhelming places to visit, and always strangely peaceful. You know, they're not particularly spooky places. Some may kind of think that they're going to be quite scary environments to be in if you're of that kind of mindset, but they're very peaceful places. Anyway, so to go back to Worcester, this ossuary had lay hidden under a house for hundreds of years, and was only rediscovered again in the late Victorian period when they did some roadworks out the front, and the workmen actually collapsed this medieval crypt in on itself, and the workmen literally fell into this crypt full of human bones, which must
Jesus.
have been. Can you imagine that? It's phenomenal. But since then, the house that's next to the cathedral, which is actually the house that used to be on the £20 note, quite a famous house, been there since the 1600s, since the Reformation. Originally a chapel there, which was the charnel chapel, which would have had a priest to say prayers for the dead every day. They, as they say, slighted that chapel, built a house on top, but the actual charnel crypt remained untouched underneath. It's a medieval crypt. It's got a vault, and it's just piled high with bones. And it had never, ever really been ever spoken about. There was this small passage in this book. There was one small university reference to it at the University of Worcester. It had never, ever been photographed, never been filmed, ever. There was only one entrance to it in the basement of this house. And I learning about this as a curious 18-year-old, I was like, well, I have to see this crypt. You know, I have to see this crypt. It's phenomenal. Nobody's really seen this apart from the people that own the house. And over the years, I went away, started my career in the television industry, working for various different companies, making adverts, working on sport and so forth, TV shows. And when I moved back to Worcester a few years ago, started working for the company that I work for now, a company called Contour. And we make TV commercials, we make corporate films, we make documentaries, all manner of things. I was telling my boss Gillian about this crypt, and at the same time, I was chatting to my parents about the place. This is going back a few years, again, maybe like 5 years or so. Mm-hmm. They were saying, "Oh well, yeah, we know at the time it's the house where the Bishop of Worcester lives. So when he becomes Bishop of Worcester, he gets given this house to live in." And I was chatting to my mum and dad about it, and they're like, "Yeah, well, we know Bishop John. He's a friend of ours." And I was like, "Oh my God."
We were just too ashamed to introduce him to you.
Exactly.
Given some of the lifestyle choices you made, son, we're not sure that it's in our best interest to let him know about it.
Yeah, which, fair enough. I can't blame. Which is exactly what they thought they wouldn't introduce me to. But it's a really, really strange turn of events that led us to making this documentary. So Bishop's wife at the time had written a book about it called A Tour of Bones, and my parents were also friends with her. And this book, A Tour of Bones, was and is a fascinating book to read. I'd encourage anybody to read it. It's a beautifully written book. And Denise, who wrote the book, while she wrote it, she was given a terminal cancer diagnosis. So the book became a kind of meditation on life and death itself, and the kind of inward-looking view that we all have of our own mortality, the absolute inevitability that we all have, that we're all going to end up like these skulls in this crypt. And obviously Denise, living in this house with her husband, the then Bishop of Worcester, was confronted with this mortality on a daily basis. She lived above this medieval crypt. Obviously they didn't go down into this crypt on a daily basis, but it was their responsibility to take care of it. It's accessed through literally a trapdoor in their cellar. And, you know, she knew on a daily basis that she was living on top of literally thousands of bones of medieval people that lived in Worcester, many that would have been connected to the cathedral and the monastic tradition that was in the cathedral. And so I got this book, read it. It was this beautiful piece. And we were just at work one day, and we had an intern start with us called Eleanor. And we were filming like an intro video with her to go on our website for her to like a meet the team type thing. And one of the questions we asked her was, tell us something unusual about yourself. And she said, oh, I live above a crypt of human bones. And we were like, wait a second. Are your parents the Bishop of Worcester and Denise Ing? I was like, yeah, that's my mum and dad. I was like, whoa, okay, right. I said, you know, I've got your mum's book. You know, it's a fascinating read. So obviously we were talking about this, and so we basically, through Eleanor, not my parents in the end, Eleanor put us in touch with Bishop John of Worcester Cathedral, and he basically we said, look, we'd love to make a documentary about this medieval crypt. Nobody knows about it. It's never ever been photographed before. It's never been filmed before. There's this fascinating relic of our medieval history just sitting there that nobody knows about at all. And with the kind of the story that runs alongside it with the book that Denise wrote, spoiler alert, unfortunately she passed away from her awful disease, and the book was published after her death, sadly, and she never got to see the book published. And we thought it'd be a really fitting tribute to her to film a really tasteful documentary about this crypt. So we put the idea to Bishop John, and he couldn't have been more helpful. He's a lovely guy, really nice guy, and let us into his life for a few days to spend time at his home. When people see the documentary, they'll see an extensive interview with Bishop John about his life with Denise and about his life living above a medieval crypt filled with human bones, and about the philosophy of why these places existed, the history of why these places existed. We also interviewed a professor of early modern history, Professor Darren Aldridge, who's an expert in the Reformation period, which made him ideal for this subject, because that's, you know, a crucial part of the history of charnel houses in the UK. And Bishop John allowed us to go and film in the crypt. So I remember the first day we filmed in the crypt, we'd spent the whole morning interviewing Bishop John, and it was like, this may sound strange, but work-wise, outside of music, it has been, in all the things I've ever worked on in TV, which has been many different pretty big things, not to want to blow my own trumpet, that it's like, that felt like this was the project that I always really wanted to make. This documentary about this crypt in my hometown, a subject that's fascinated me since childhood. And I remember Bishop John opening the trapdoor into the crypt of bones, and it was my first opportunity to ever actually see it with my own eyes. And I remember lowering myself down into the initial doorway, because the floor for the crypt is kind of offset for the where the cellar is, because obviously it's on the original medieval footprint of the city. Yeah. And you're greeted, you drop down through this trapdoor, and you're immediately greeted with a medieval stone archway. And you move through this stone archway, and just at eye level is just a sea of human remains, basically human bones, skulls, and they're not in any kind of order, unlike a lot of ossuaries where the skulls are neatly organized in rows. These are just thrown in there. They're just a mass pile over time, because they've not really been looked after in hundreds of years. They're just a pile of skulls and bones. You literally have to walk over them as you're moving through the space. And what was really interesting was because there's no electricity down there, it's literally not changed in 800 years. And what was fascinating for Bishop John coming down there with us was he'd never ever seen the place with electric lighting. We took our,
you took your box lights and stuff down there, I would assume.
Exactly, yeah. And we could see the original medieval paint, the whitewash paint on the walls, which in parts had peeled off, but he'd never seen that before. He'd always only ever been down there in like torchlight or candlelight. And it was a real privilege to be the first people to ever document the place on film. And we put together the documentary Life Over Death, which has only had 2 public screenings so far. It screened at the Worcester Film Festival, where it was, we were lucky enough to actually win Best Documentary at that festival. And we had a special we had a special screening of the film actually in the nave of Worcester Cathedral on a massive cinema screen that we put literally on the high altar. Put this cinema screen, and
straight after this, guys, it's The Exorcist.
Or Werner Herzog's Nosferatu would have been. But it was actually partly in commemoration of 10 years since Denise had passed away.
This is something I was going to point out. Like I thought it was interesting as the documentary develops. You kind of picked up on the thread of Bishop John and Denise's relationship and their love for each other, and that kind of is a thread that you take throughout the entire documentary, and it gives the documentary a lot more meaning. Because I think it's what I took away from it, and it's something I've reflected on with various guests, and I certainly reflect on in my personal life a lot. It's this meditation on the fact that we're all going to die, as you said earlier. At some point, we're all going to have to cross that threshold. But I feel like the people that actually do spend time productively meditating about that are the ones that have a far greater appreciation, not just for the fact that they're alive, but they have a far greater gratitude and appreciation for the people that they get to spend their time with.
Definitely.
And that to me, that really spoke to me about the documentary, because it seemed to kind of burrow into something specific I'd been thinking about.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you say that, and that's exactly the intention that we wanted to make people feel at the end of the documentary. We kind of almost wanted to not trick people into thinking this is just a historical film about a crypt filled with human bones, which is obviously incredibly fascinating. It is that, but it's multi-layered in that there's the story of how it feels to be faced with one's own mortality, and how that then impacts the way you approach the rest of your life going forward, how you treat other people, how you appreciate even the smallest things. There's a famous quote from the book Tour of Bones where Denise says being faced with her own mortality taught her to not treat life preciously, and Bishop John quotes this in the film. Life it is precious, but it shouldn't be treated as precious as in something delicate and fragile. But life should be delicious, and life should be treated deliciously, and to savor, getting up and making your kids breakfast in the morning, and savoring every sip of coffee and enjoying every element of life that you possibly can. And I think that's a brilliant sentiment to take away. Obviously, whilst we're all trying to make mysterious atmospheric music, that's the same thing. We're trying to, we're appreciating all these elements of life that we're experiencing. And whilst the film involves a somewhat religious subject matter, it's obviously not a religious film, and it's made by people that are all with varying different beliefs. And I'm not religious in that sense, but it really, it resonated with me, and it made me meditate on exactly the things that you just spoke about, and it certainly made me think going forward in life to really appreciate everything going forward. And yeah, the film's just been a real pleasure and privilege to make and be a part of. There's only a team of 4 of us that made the film, and the screening in the cathedral really was like the culmination of the project. And we had we actually sold out the tickets for it. We had over 300 people attend it, and we had a Q&A with myself and Bishop John at the end of the screening, and Gillian, the director, and the Q&A went on for ages. They actually had to stop the Q&A because it was going on for too long, which was really nice. That it really resonated with so many people, and so many people had a lot of questions to ask about it. And so far, those are the only couple of times it's been screened. I'd really love to bring it to some of the UK festivals. Have started to have a lot of these kind of talks and things like that. I know you've been a part of some of these talks at a couple of metal festivals, and it's a film that I'd love to have as a screening at a festival. I think people would appreciate it. I think people would understand it and get it.
You should talk to Dominic about maybe doing it at Fortress next year.
Yeah, maybe that'd be good. Obviously, we played Fortress a couple of years ago, and the organisers are great and receptive to new ideas. So maybe that's a great idea to if we can do something.
I'll definitely mention it to him. I'll speak to Katie as well, actually, and see about what the plans are for Inferno next year. I think I was thinking Fortress because it might be easier to get something set up there in terms of a screen and a projector, because you have that amphitheater already. You only got those smaller rooms at Inferno. Yeah. I think that'd be a great idea. And have you looked into, or is there a possibility of it getting a wider release at some point?
Yeah, we're looking into it. We've been in talks with a number of different outlets. At the moment, it's looking like we may well get it onto Amazon Prime. So it may well have a public release on Amazon Prime, so it'll be widely available. So I guess if anyone's interested in seeing it, just keep an eye on my social media channels, and there'll be more news of that as and when. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be, but we need to do something with it soon. So it's just like I say, it's been a project that's been really kind of close to my heart. There's been like a culmination of nearly 25 years of intention to make this project, and just the cards all kind of fell in the right place, and it was rather fateful in all these circumstances aligning and allowing us to make this film. So yeah, I'm glad it resonated with you. Thought you
very much so, and I really appreciate you sharing it with me as well. Final thing before we wrap up, you've mentioned it to me a couple of times when we bumped into each other. I'm here to diagnose your audio problems. So you mentioned you want to talk about the audio side of things. What's your setup right now? What's your or do you have a setup is the first question.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Funnily enough, do you know what? I actually listened to your episode where you spoke about where you'd been to the Munich Hi-Fi show, and you gave a rundown of what your picks would be at certain price points, and your picks for a certain price point were actually exactly my setup.
Oh, really?
Yeah, literally, purely by chance. It's a setup I've had for about 4 years now.
So out of curiosity, what is it?
So I've got a Denon amp.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember exactly which model it is, but I'm pretty sure it's the model that you listed. I can't remember.
I need to remind myself what that is actually.
Numbers. So it's the Denon amp, and I've got the Project Audiophile turntable,
and
then I've got a pair of Wharfdale Diamond speakers to go with that. And then I've got a little Pioneer CD player. We don't need to talk about that.
Those Wharfdale Diamond speakers are a fucking steal. I cannot believe that they are sold for the price that they're sold at, because they really, really are good. Do you have the 12.3 floor standers, or do you have the bookshelves?
I've got the bookshelves.
Okay, all right. Is that because of wife acceptance factor, or?
No, she loves it. It's actually a little project we put together. We both collect vinyl, so
she's not like Paige that refers to it as hi-fi shite.
No. We put it together, the two of us. It sounds great. I mean, for the price, I think it was maybe all in all just over $1,000 in total. So not when we're talking hi-fi. Obviously, it's not big numbers, not compared to your own.
How dare you? Don't my humble setup. Yes. I'm very lucky with the fact that I don't pay retail price for that stuff.
Yeah. I can imagine what it would be retail wise.
It's not something. I mean, I'll put it this way: if the house burned down, I wouldn't. I would be able to replace it, but only if insurance are very generous. So I would say, just from hearing what you said there, I'd say probably the amp is the weak link in your chain.
Quite possibly, yeah.
And that's what I would probably think about replacing first and foremost.
Yeah.
Because those Wharfdale Diamonds are pretty versatile speakers. You can get a lot out of them and not spend a huge amount of money in them. I'm trying to think what's a pretty good one. Some of the newer, so I've heard Audiolab partner incredibly well with Wharfdale. Actually, a couple of years ago, I heard them at the Bristol show, and I also heard them at the Ascot show. I mean, depending on how much you have to spend, I would probably look at something like the Audiolab 7000 or maybe even the 8000 series. You should be able to get a couple on. You should be able to get them on eBay for a reasonable price. And most of the time they will have been looked after nicely.
Yeah.
I take that back. I wouldn't go for the 8000. I would go for the 7000 series because that's newer. Right. And I'd go for I
know that.
I'm just looking right now. So there's a 7000A integrated amplifier on eBay. I think it has a phono stage in as well. So you need that for your records.
Sure.
Yes, it does. It does have a phono stage.
Yep.
And that is £875.
Oh right, yeah.
So that's not too bad. I'll have a look for a couple of others. But I know they pair well with Wharfdale.
Nice.
Yeah. At that price point, Cambridge Audio is pretty good as well.
Yeah, I was looking at some Cambridge stuff. I know a few friends have got Cambridge stuff, and they rave about their setups with the Cambridge stuff. So my friend Darren Toms who was instrumental in our history on Candlelight Records. He's a big advocate for Cambridge. Audio.
The other brand that I'm very fond of is Arcam.
Oh yeah.
So the Arcam A25 integrated amplifier, I heard that driving a couple of JBL speakers in Munich, and I was fucking blown away. I was like, this whole setup here is about $4,000, and it sounds better than some $40,000 setups I've heard. It was like me and my friend both, and he's. I don't know if the word is if the right word is snobby, but he can be a bit more picky than me. He'll be like, this is garbage. He's got a setup that makes mine look fucking, like a pauper's setup. but even he was impressed. So that A25 is pretty good. I want to just see how much that costs. So that the A25 is a good integrated amp, brand new. They're 1,499. You'll definitely be able to get discounts on it if you negotiate hard enough. And if you go on eBay again, you'll be able to get something. You'll be able to get a secondhand for a pretty reasonable amount. The Marantz Model 50 is another integrated that everyone fucking raves about.
Pretty sure that's possibly what Chris has got. I think he's got the Marantz.
Yeah. But what I like about Arkham is it's got a very warm sound. And so what it tends to do, especially with some of the gnarlier productions that are, commonplace and stuff like Blaze in the Northern Sky and whatever, it tends to soften that a little bit, because some amplifiers will have a incredibly transparent presentation, and that's fine. But then you have to just make peace with the fact it's going to be almost impossible for you to enjoy like older stuff because they're so badly produced.
Yeah, ultimately we're putting stuff on there like Ulver's Natens Madrigal, which sounds like a wasp. So
exactly. So Arkham, if that's the case, I would say Arkham is your best bet. That's what I would. That's my aim would be. Get one of the higher range Arkham integrated amplifiers that has a phono stage built in.
Yeah.
They won't let you down. I
think you're right in that the amp's probably the thing to be replaced, to just elevate it a bit, because the turntable's pretty bang on, really. It's great for the price point. I think the turntable was maybe only around 400, which is,
So Project is owned by the same company that does Musical Fidelity. And they do very, very high quality, extremely affordable stuff. I'm a very big fan of what they do. Their whole mission about having something that's creating high end affordable stuff. I'm a big fan of it. I would say, Musical Fidelity is pretty good as well. I heard in Munich, I heard part of the Griffin system that was behind me when I was talking to Runa. I think it's this one, had the Griffin Audio Legato Legacy Phono preamp, which retails at 15,000. So that's just a phono preamp.
I'll ask my bank.
So, yeah, no, I'm not. I don't have vinyl, so I don't. I don't dabble in that game. All I have is a very, very good streaming DAC.
Yeah,
but I don't have space for vinyl.
Yeah. Do you what kind of, when you're streaming stuff, what kind of format file wise do you go for that?
So I stream off Qobuz, and then it streams lossless DSD into the B audio pack. So what comes out is, I think it's like 96 to 192 hertz or something like that. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
I had Cheyenne and I wanted to show off the system, and I couldn't fucking figure out how to get the thing started, because for whatever reason I couldn't get the DAC to connect to the to my streaming app, and I must have struggled for about 45 minutes. Finally got it done, and about 5 minutes in, he was listening, and he was like, "That's fucking incredible."
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
but dude, I'm so glad we finally got to talk. It feels like we could probably end up talking for another 2-3 hours. We will definitely have to do this again at some point.
Definitely.
My daughter lives in Bucknell, so I sometimes, depending on how many road closures there are, I sometimes go through Worcester to get to her. Okay. So at some point, you're not far away from where I am. So
no, whereabouts are you?
I live outside of a village called Great Shefford. So if I go now, when I pick her up, I go to Lindell and pick her up there. I meet her mom kind of halfway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know Worcester. Not massively well, but I've driven through it quite a lot.
Yeah, it's a great place. Well, we've just moved, and we've got a great. I think I mentioned to you last time I saw you. We've got a great barbecue garden. So when the weather improves in the spring, you guys will have to come over for some.
Hell yeah, man! I'm down with that any day of the week. We'll invite Justin round.
Yes, he's a long way away.
But to say I'm not so sure he'd enjoy my barbecue.
No. Maybe some I don't know. Vegan.
Can't have vegan stuff on my grill, mate. That's the grill. It's like it becomes like Reagan from The Exorcist. He just screams and burns and.
It's my other half's vegetarian, so we're always kind of cooking to like, can I make a meat version of this?
Have you been forced into that perverse way of existence?
I refuse to, and no offense to any kind of vegan or vegetarian listeners, but I go to the gym a few times a week, and I need to eat steak and eggs after the gym. So it's
yeah. No, I can't go with that. I've scaled down a little bit on the red meat recently because I'm trying to lose a bit of weight, but no, I will never stop eating steak. Never. If it gets to a point where our CO2 emissions are tracked, and they start saying, well, come June, you have to start buying carbon credits if you want to buy more steak. I shit you not. I've already thought it through. We've got enough space here. We'll keep my own cattle.
Jackie,
even if it means I have to do the slaughtering myself.
I mean that is something that we could talk for a whole other couple of hours about, social credit systems and things like that.
Yeah. But, well, then without a doubt, to be continued. Again, well done on this new album. It's fucking sensational, and very much looking forward to bumping into you again at some point down the road. But we'll do one of these again probably before that.
Yeah, I'd love to. Brilliant. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you again soon.
My pleasure, brother. Take care. Wrapping up a fantastic conversation with a great guy. You just listened to In Silent Grace, featuring the great Alan Averill of Primordial on guest vocals. That is by Winterfylleth, and it is taken off their brand new album, The Imperious Horizon. That is out right now on Candlelight Records. There is very good reasons for it getting the amount of hype and acclaim that it has been getting. So if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure that you do. I'll post their Bandcamp link in the description to the podcast, as always. And if you do buy yourself any music, you know what to do. Also, make sure if you're based in the UK that you go and check them out. They are playing on the 4th of November with Worm Witch and Bizarre Cult at Tapyard Studios in Newcastle. On November the 5th, they will be at Audio in Glasgow. On November the 6th, they will be at Billy Bootleggers in Nottingham. On November 7th, they will be in Cavan in Exeter. On November the 8th, they will be at the Dome in London. On November the 9th, they will be at the Baths in Ipswich. And on November the 10th, they will be at Rebellion in Manchester. So if you haven't seen them live yet, or if you have, make sure you get out there and see them. I'm going to try and make it to that London show, but I can't promise anything. It's weeks away from Paige and I getting married. And so, I've got a bunch of stuff that I need to be doing ahead of that. Ahead of my wedding night, when I will be handing over my innocence to my lover. Anyway, I wanted to talk very quickly about some new releases before we get to the news rant. Just stuff I've been listening to that I've been particularly fond of, or that has attracted my attention particularly. No reviews or anything like that. I'll kind of just name the albums and just say a few kind words about them. First and foremost, there's the new Black Curse record, Burning in Celestial Poison. Not getting the most love on Metal Storm. I see the average Metal Storm rating is 6.9, which I think is a disgrace. It should be 9.6. If you liked the previous Black Curse record, Endless Wound, I see no reason why you wouldn't be fucking falling over yourself to get hold of this. If you haven't heard them yet, they make black and death metal of just the grittiest, nastiest variety. And on this new record, I think that they really, really step up the intensity. So I absolutely love that. It's out now on Sepulchral Voice Records. Another album I've really been enjoying is the new record by Gigan. Now, Gigan's new record is entitled, and this is a fucking mouthful, so bear with me, Anomalous Abstractigate Infantesimus. I'm actually fucking shocked that I got it right the first time I said it. But we discovered this band on the news rant, and I was very pleasantly surprised. I didn't think much of the name Gigan for some reason. And when I finally heard the music, I was like, this isn't bad. When you listen to the whole album, you will be blown away. It's billed as technical death metal, and I think you can call it that. But there is so much going on here by way of experimentation, atmosphere, attitude. I hear traces of stuff like Concrete Winds. I actually even hear some influences of grind bands like Narzum. But it's all wrapped up in one really, really original package. So love it. Absolutely love it. Something that I don't love quite as much, and I'm sad to say this. You guys are going to know exactly why when I mention the band. Gaerea have just put out their new album, Coma. I have been a Gaerea champion for a very long time. I thought that this band had all the makings of future genre leaders. If you think about their first couple of records, they really were a band that, in my view, had established something very, very special with Unsettling Whispers, Limbo. I thought Mirage was a really great record. When the first single for Coma was released, which I believe was Hope Shatters, I thought that was decent. And then just progressively, the singles started getting or feeling more watered down, more tepid. And frankly, I find myself feeling pretty indifferent towards the new material. I think a lot of the intensity has been stripped away from the band in favor of something that's a lot more polished, and something that, to me, and tell me in the comments whether you guys agree with this or not, but I feel like this band is very self-consciously trying to make themselves more palatable to a wider audience, which I just do not think is the right move. I think if you're a band like Gaerea, don't go away from what brought you to the dance, and clearly there has been a scaling back of their brutality, of their aggression on Coma. And again, I understand if they want to become a gateway band, but that's kind of going to be the top end of what I think they are capable of doing if they keep going down this direction. So to me, this new album, Coma, creative misfire in my view, and it's a real shame. I think the thing that's more concerning is it has made me feel quite indifferent towards them. As somebody who was a fan of the band, still considers myself a fan of the previous records, I think the worst place you can find yourself in as a band, period, is that point of indifference. And that's what I feel about their new music. And again, I know that they've not always been the most popular choice amongst the Legion. Many of you guys, haven't liked anything that they've done. That's fine too. But I thought that there was something special, and this new album is not special at all. What is special, however, is the new album by Mother of Graves. It's out on Profound Law Records. It's called The Periapt of Absence. It follows up to their 2022 record, Where the Shadows Adorn, which I really enjoyed, but I always felt was an album that showcased potential more than something that truly defined excellence. The Periapt of Absence, I believe, settles that question. It truly is a fucking fantastic record. Death Doom with enough sense to know that we all still listen to metal because we want to snap our necks, because we want to bob our heads. So rhythmically, there's none of the meandering, or at least very little of the meandering you find with a lot of Death Doom bands, particularly Death Doom bands that do this style. And actually you get some very tight songwriting, some very focused hooks, and just an album that you want to go back to and listen to again and again. I really have been thoroughly hooked on this pretty much since its release. I could not recommend it more highly, and that's why before we get to the news rant, I'm going to play you a track off that album right now. This is called Upon Burdened Hands. Taken from their brand new album, The Periapt of Absence, that was Mother of Graves with their new song, Upon Burdened Hands. 10 out of 10 stuff, in my opinion. Great to see them put out a sophomore record of that caliber, of that quality, and it's available right now on Profound Law Records. Link in the description to the podcast. As per usual, I'm going to try and get somebody from Mother of Graves on the podcast, although the old schedule is getting a little stacked between now and the end of the year, but that is to the great benefit of every single member of the Legion, so I'm sure no one is going to complain. Right now, though, my friends, I've got a little something to get off my chest once again, and that is this. If you're the kind of fucking sniveling weasel that posts day in the life videos on TikTok like the rest of us should give a shit, then it's time to hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, friends, it is a solo news rant this week, which they're becoming an increasing rarity. I know that you guys, many of you have sent me messages saying how much you enjoy when I have guests on these. And as always, guests would be my preference as well. I do like doing these by myself, but it's nice to have somebody to, bounce some commentary off of. Always good to be able to catch up with my friends. I have Drew Garth, Matt Brizzo, the Sinister Minister, Mike Scandado, and the like on. I've got a bunch of other people that are lined up as well that I need to, we need to find times in the diary that align at some point. But I'm definitely going to try and do them more often than not. But today, you have me and me alone, and we are coming out hot out of the gate, as they say, kicking off on metalstorm.net, as always, the finest metal news website in all the land. There is news here of a brand new Abduction record coming out early next year. I am a big fan of Abduction, and that fandom stretches all the way back to the very beginning of the podcast, episode 5 of Into the Necrosphere, which feels like a lifetime ago, as was when I first spoke to AV, the front man, the main man of Abduction, and he's been on the podcast twice since then. Last one, I think, was last year for it was about episode 190. It was when we were at Reaperfest in Derbyshire. Anyway, you're not here for a fucking history lesson, so let's read the article. Abduction detail next studio record. It says here on January the 24th, 2025, black metal purveyors Abduction out of the UK will put out their 5th studio record entitled Existentialismus. It was recorded by Ian Bolt at Stuck on Name Studios in Nottingham, UK. It was mixed and mastered by Tore Sterna at Necromorbus Studios in Sweden. Looks like it will be released on Candlelight Records, the same label that put out their previous album, Black Blood. I'll comment on Black Blood and on the album prior to that, All Pain is Penance, after we've listened to the first 90 seconds or so of the song. So let's get on with it. It's been interesting for me watching AV's evolution as a songwriter in the time that I've known him. But, you know, even if you go all the way back to the first record that Abduction put out, which by his admission was basically a solo project, and I believe the one after that, A Crown of Curses, was basically the same. All Pain is Penance, I think he wrote and recorded everything there himself as well, barring the drums. But yeah, he has absolutely refined his approach. His approach being very much naked second wave Norwegian black metal worship with a dash of Polish black metal thrown in for good measure. But it's kind of filtered through his own lens. You know, and as much as I wouldn't call that lens uniquely English or anything like that, I would just call it uniquely AV. You know, he has a way of writing songs where you can tell that he has the live experience in mind. This is a great example. We're going to listen to the rest of the song in a second, but that bit that he has just slowed down on now, you can hear he kind of wants to throw out something for the audience to get their teeth into, to sort of find their bearings on. If they've never ever seen or heard Abduction and they were to watch them live, he wants the track to have something where the neophyte can latch onto, if that makes sense. And I think that's very important. I think a lot of bands completely overlook that. And it's absolutely fine to be blasting at, you know, God knows how many beats per minute at all times. But if you just think about the live setting, you run the risk that if the sound is not absolutely pristine, you come across as just sounding like a bunch of noise, and that could be very boring to watch. So yeah, there is that second wave Norwegian black metal worship in here, but there's also just, I think, I don't know if the phrase is common sense, but let's call it common sense songwriting in there, and that really, really elevates the music. I like it very much. I know I'm only 1 minute 42 seconds in, but this is super promising. So let's get back to it. Another thing that's really working well for me here is not just the production on the vocals, but the performance itself. You know, he has a way of delivering vocals that it doesn't sound like a death metal growl. It doesn't sound necessarily like a traditional black metal scream. It just sounds, with all those waves of reverb coming over it, it just sounds unearthly, and I love it. I think it suits the music really, really well. And again, it's something that he's really improved on as this band has gone on, has been the ability to inject a degree of emotion into what he's doing as well. So rather than it just sounding like, you know, sort of a mechanical additional instrument, like a lot of vocals sound, he definitely, you know, has much more of an emotive range now than he had, say, you know, 5-6 years ago. So this, for me, absolute thumbs up, top notch even, I would go as far as to say. I really, really like it, and I am excited about breaking my popping my Abduction cherry next year at Fortress Festival, where they'll be playing. I've yet to see Abduction play live. I'm glad I'm finally going to be able to do it at Fortress Festival next year. I know, by the way, that the majority of my audience comes from the States. So let me just say this, and I'm not an advocate for the English Tourist Board here, but if you are looking for an excuse to come to the UK, I cannot think of a better one than May 31st and June 1st next year, Fortress Festival taking place in Scarborough. I am going to be a part of that. I'm going to be part of it in the sense that I'm going to be doing live podcasts there like I did this year. We're going to be applying some of the things that we learned, I think, from that experience, for next year's edition and make it a lot cooler, a lot more immersive. But regardless of whether I'm there or not, the lineup is just absolutely stacked. Taking it from the top, obviously we've got Agalok, who are the headliners. Them I can take or leave, if I'm perfectly honest, but we've then got Ruim. Now, Ruim, if you've stumbled onto this podcast by mistake, because let's be honest, the only reason you shouldn't know about Ruim is if that is the case. That features Blasphemer, a.k.a. Runa Eriksson of Ultimass, formerly of Mayhem. Ulcerate, Fortress, Spirit, Possession, the Great Old Ones, Oculus, cannot wait for that. I expect a couple of people to be standing in the back of the crowd sobbing as they play. Selpst, absolutely phenomenal band, formerly out of Venezuela, now out of Chile. We've got Abduction, of course. We've got Devastator. We've got 1349. We've got Fen. It's going to be an absolutely incredible weekend. And one thing that I'll say, my experience with Fortress Festival this year was overwhelmingly positive, both from being able to be part of it. That was a lot of fun, but actually just the whole crowd vibe, everything was just positive and uplifting. People really seemed to want to be there. There seemed to be a lot of positive energy in the air. And even Paige, my fiance, remarked that. And for her, who doesn't come from the scene whatsoever, to have enjoyed herself and to have, found it to be an uplifting experience, I think that says an awful lot. So, yeah, if you're going to be there next year, you are almost certainly going to be seeing me. And, let's have a couple of beers. Let's talk some shit. All right, moving on, we've got news about Mastodon writing new material. Obviously no music yet, but in a recent interview with Heavy, Mastodon drummer Bran Daylor revealed that they are writing new material for their next music output, something that I've mentioned before, but I will say again, they have got a lot to make up for after the absolute train smash that was that last record they did, Hushed and Grim. I mean, I've been a fan basically for their entire career. I've mentioned before having seen them at the London Underworld when they were touring Remission. There was maybe that venue was halfway full, and I knew then and there that they were going to be absolutely massive one day, and sure enough, that proved to be the case. But whether it was Crack the Sky, whether it was Once More Around the Sun, I've always liked the fact that they do different things, but Hush and Grim, what a fucking misfire that was. Just a complete and utter disaster. So hopefully they've learned their lesson and this new record gets us back on track. But that being said, let's go with what is probably more the tempo of most of the Legion listening. Ante-Inferno present a brand new single called Cold Tenebrous Evil, in the wake of their upcoming album release, Death's Soliloquy, due out on November the 22nd on Vendetta Records. Black metalers Ante-Inferno have debuted a brand new single entitled Cold Tenebrous Evil. Now, full disclosure, Gary Stevenson of Ante-Inferno is the organizer of Fortress Festival, for anyone that doesn't know. That being said, I've always been pretty honest about my views on Ante-Inferno. I had a lot of people recommending their debut album, Fane, to me, and I just could never quite... It never resonated with me like it did with many others. It felt to me like it was the sound of a band that was looking for their lane, couldn't quite find it, and so sought to solve the problem by just throwing loads and loads of different ideas at the wall and looking to see what sticks, which is not, I think, uncommon for a younger band. When they put out Antediluvian Dreamscapes in 2022, that's where things snapped into focus for me. And I think that album, they kind of moved towards a gnarlier, slightly more evil sounding lane. I was trying to find the words for it, but inevitably we were going to wind up in the same place. But yeah, definitely a little, I wouldn't even say necessarily more severity. It just sounded a little gnarlier, a little nastier, a little darker. what I have heard so far off of Death's soliloquy is kind of the same, down the same track. And that's been very promising to me. So let's hear what Cold Tenebrous Evil sounds like, and then I'll tell you my thoughts after the first 90 seconds. So like I was saying before we listened to this track, there has been a definite shift in the focus of this band, and I think they're much better off for it. This, to me, just solidifies what I said. This is darker, it's more menacing, it has a rawer feel to it somehow. And just as a point of comparison, so last week I spoke to Drugoth about Fluss, the female vocalist for the Swiss black metal band Ara. And you know, my view was that her voice is almost so abrasive that it puts you off. And I've generally speaking not been the biggest fan of her vocals. Kai Beanlander, who's the vocalist for Ante-Inferno, I think has a similarly abrasive voice, but you know, on the spur of the moment, kind of having to think on the spot. I don't know whether it's the music or whether it's just her delivery or whether it's the production, but I think this level of abrasiveness, what she brings to the table, I think works far more effectively than Fluss. Certainly in this context, I think she sounds fantastic. I think the main riff to the song sounds very, very cool as well. I just like the whole vibe, you know. And for me, this definitely gets another thumbs up and another top notch. Let's be honest. I really like it. Okay. Let's move on. We have got news here of a Gates of Slumber song that has just been released. Let's give that one a listen. Judging by the photo, I would assume that three men, particularly one who's rocking the old skullet, standing in front of the American flag, might be triggering to people. Some would argue possibly triggering to all the right people. But it says here, death metal formation from Indianapolis, Indiana, the Gates of Slumber have shared their second single, Full Moon Fever, of their upcoming self-titled studio record. The latter drops on November the 29th on Swart Records. Can't exactly say I am a Gates of Slumber fan, but there's been a couple of Doom bands recently that I've been pretty impressed with, including some I've heard on this very news rant. One that really sticks with me, and I'm frankly just looking for an excuse to shoehorn in another plug for their work because I think they're fantastic. Literally no other reason, is Druids. I had Keith Rich from Druids on the podcast, for those that remember, probably about 100 or so episodes ago. Their 2022 album, Shadowwork, is one that I truly implore you to listen to if you haven't listened to it yet. I don't care what style of music you like. To me, that one just absolutely knocks it out of the park. It is fucking phenomenal. Now, that being said, this isn't a article about druids. It's about the Gates of Slumber. So let's hear what this new track sounds like. I can take or leave that. Decent production, really like the bass sound. I think the guitar sound actually is good as well, nice and beefy. The main riff, the vibe of the song is just beer drinking music. The three guys in the band look like they, three fellas who, I wouldn't mind cracking a few cold ones open with as well. But if we're talking about stuff I would go back and listen to over and over again, or some, an album, a release that I'd get excited about, I don't think that, Full Moon Fever or anything off this upcoming self-titled studio album is something that's going to, fall into that bracket. It's not bad. I think if you like the style of music, you're probably going to enjoy this, but not quite for me. All right, let's move on. Centinex stream a new single. It's called As You Die. Very much from the old guard, Centinex. I can't remember when I last paid any attention to them. They did, in fairness, always strike me very much as one of death metal's maybe third tier. But, that being said, there's a reason why bands endure for as long as they do. These guys have been around since 1990, which is fucking wild. It says here, experienced death metal ensemble Centinex are streaming a brand new 2-track single, As You Die. Both tracks are available for us to listen to, they say. As You Die is the name of one, and Into Ashes is the other. We won't bother with Into Ashes, but we will try As You Die. I note that they have been signed by Black Lion Records, and Black Lion Records seem to be signing up as many bands as they can possibly add to a roster, which, sometimes pays off, sometimes does not. But anyway, let's hear what this sounds like. I'm going to stop it there. I'm kind of expecting Lemmy to start vocaling at any moment. As a matter of fact, the beginning of the song if Lemmy had started singing, or if there were a way for you to mix in Lemmy's vocals from the verse to Ace of Spades, I think it would fit in pretty perfectly. The song is pretty trite. I can't really remember what Centinex's earlier music sounds like, but I was just having a quick scan on Metal Archives, and they don't actually have, with the exception of the bassist, they don't have a single original member left in the band. Their guitarist joined in 2019, their drummer joined in 2020, and Grandpa Simpson, their vocalist, otherwise known as Henrik Anderson, he joined in 2019 as well. And he really, if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, you will know exactly what I mean. He looks like, this sounds like a Motorhead cover band where your grandpa is pretending to do death metal vocals. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, I'm not being ageist. I'm also rocking a, badger stripe, an increasingly sizable badger stripe in my beard. But this is verging on being embarrassing with the greatest of respect. So yeah, that's a definite fucking thumbs down from me. Let's move on to another death metal band. Shrieking Demons have dropped a brand new single. It's called Apostasy, Sodomy, and Sacrilege. It says here, death metalers Shrieking Demons have dropped the Apostasy, Sodomy, and Sacrilege single as a second preview of their forthcoming debut record, The Festering Dwellers. The latter is going to be released by Transcending Obscurity Records, with additional album details coming soon. Let's hear what this one sounds like. I'll pause it there. I think that lead is about the only real saving grace of the song. That is an extremely well-written, well-performed lead. It sounds great. And it elevates an otherwise pretty dismal song. This is the kind of knowingly old school or retro death metal that imitates a style that, frankly, we were happy to leave behind in the 90s. And, I don't want to sound like a grumpy old man moaning and groaning, because last week I was complaining about how another Transcending Obscurity record signing, Fleshbore, sound like they lack conviction. I wouldn't say this sounds like it lacks conviction. It just doesn't have anything creative. There's nothing about it that I listen to and go, I absolutely must discover everything there is to discover about the Shrieking Demons back catalog. You know what I mean? I say I should discover everything about their back catalog. They don't have much. They have an EP called Diabolical Regurgitations that they put out in 2021, and this is going to be their first album. But yeah, it's just not good. It's derivative. It's boring. I think the vocals sound like a fucking mess. Yeah, it's getting a very decisive thumbs down for me. All right, let's see what else we've got. Biohazard are touring Europe with Life of Agony next year. The great Scott Bamford, a long-serving, high-ranking member of the Legion, dropped me a note about this to let me know that it was happening. I'm very excited. It says here, Brooklyn, New York veterans Biohazard and Life of Agony share the stage on a monumental European co-headlining tour. The 24-day trek will be launched on February the 25th, 2025 in Nottingham, UK, and will visit 10 countries before wrapping up on March the 29th, 2025 in Amsterdam. They're going to be playing on the 4th of March at the Kentish Town Forum. And ironically, just as Simon and I were talking about Eastpack Resistance, which is the first time that I saw Biohazard, it was at that venue, I will absolutely be there. Mark your calendars on that, unless I have to be away for work or, something crazy happens. I think it's a Tuesday night. Definitely, 1 billion% will try and be there. I also saw that they've just announced signing to a new label. I'll see what my connects can throw up. If there's a way for me to meet anybody from the band and do a face-to-face, I will certainly be down with that. I mean, I know they're not black metal, or death metal, but they've been mentioned so many times on this podcast. I kind of feel like it's a must at some point. Another band who's been mentioned an awful lot on this podcast, of course, is Wasp. Now, I'm going to lift the lid off the mystery. I did try my very best, Legion, to get Blackie Lawless set up for episode 250. I reached out to a introduction that was made for me by Katie. That person moved me on to Wasp's management, but I've not heard anything back. And, it's been 2 weeks. I think it's safe to say it's probably not happening. I think that the reason for that is a lot of the old guard, it's been my experience, and I kind of understand where they're coming from. They come from a time where magazine covers, a 4-page article in Kerrang magazine, that sort of thing counted for a lot. Being featured on, a rock radio station meant an awful lot to your album sales. It meant an awful lot to your profile. And then when they look at new media, they look at podcasting, they're going to go onto my YouTube channel and they're going to see 4.8 thousand subscribers. And I mean, average, obviously this wasn't the case with the Necro Butcher, but the average episode gets about maybe between 600 and 1,000 views. And then, we get probably 3,000 to 4,000 per episode on all of the other audio platforms. So they look at that and they go, well, that's not big enough. That's small fry. It's not for me. But this is a cumulative thing. What I do stays on the internet and is something that people will discover. I mean, I'm still getting feedback for episodes that I did in 2019. The Jason Mendonça Acrococker interview, I probably get 3-4 comments about that every single week. I still get comments in relation to the Charles Gould Mayhem guitarist interview that I did for episode 40. So, this is something where people might discover the podcast later and then they start going back and they check out all the episodes. And again, I'm not talking about getting 50, 60,000 downloads per episode, but, it all adds up. And this is also the way in which I think this is the way in which a lot of bands are hopefully going to be able to get more recognition, more of a springboard. And equally, you know, there's like one hand washes the other here. You know, if there's higher profile people that come on the podcast, it attracts more eyeballs. That gives me a platform to take, you know, and hopefully elevate more smaller bands. So that's always been the vision of what I do. But the other thing that I know about the Legion is that you guys are very, very engaged. You have a reputation for being very engaged. I've had this firsthand from not just Katie, but multiple PR people, that when we've had people on the podcast, when we had a guest from a band, they see an immediate increase in their Bandcamp sales the week after. And that's irrefutable. And part of the reason I know this is happening is because you guys also make a point, many of you, that when you buy something, you let the bands know that it was old Jackson into the Necrosphere who sent you. So that really, really helps. I do want to ask you guys a favor. And I asked this during the news rant because I know that it's the diehards. It's probably the higher ranking members of the Legion that are listening right now. One thing that really would make a difference to this podcast is more ratings on Spotify. So right now I've got 144 ratings. I get, you know, many times that in terms of listeners every single week. You know, again, the number of impressions I get is about 250,000 per month. The number of downloads I get per month on Spotify is probably 6,000 to 7,000. So there's a very significant listener base for the podcast on that show, on that platform. So there's clearly a lot of people that haven't done the ratings yet. Literally, all you need to do is go in, select the show, say ratings, and give me 5 stars. If we can get that up to 200, 210, maybe 220, if we can get past, you know, a podcast like Alan Averill, which already has a big profile, that starts to, you know, I think smooth the, it starts to grease the cogs of the machine with a fair few PR folk. So, you know, I always ask to, you know, you guys to subscribe and all of that sort of stuff. You know, and frankly, I almost in some ways, I sometimes feel stupid doing it. Sometimes I say it purely as a force of habit. But if you do want to support the podcast genuinely, and the you know, I jokingly always say, and the spirit moves you to do so. If you do want to support it, I don't have a Patreon. I'll never ask anybody for money or anything like that. But you literally, the biggest thing you can do to help elevate this show is to give me a 5-star rating on Spotify. And if you listen to it on Apple, give me a 5-star review on there. The more we do that, the more we start to get to a point where when I reach out to somebody in a band, or, you know, a new PR person takes a look at what I'm doing on the podcast, suddenly they start to go, yeah, okay, this person's got a pretty sizable audience. And again, we know the audience is highly engaged as well. So anyway, didn't want to go off on too much of a tangent there, but I just thought I would mention that I do have somebody in mind now for episode 200 as an alternative to Blackie Lawless. Not 200, sorry, 250. As an alternative to Blackie Lawless, and you guys won't be disappointed. You won't be disappointed in the remainder of the year. I mean, the remainder of the year is fucking absolutely fantastic. It's now at a point where I might actually have too much going on to be able to wrap up on December the 17th. So there might be a little Christmas Eve episode coming your way as well. Anyway, let us move on. We've got a reissue of Testament's Practice What You Preach album. I'm going to listen to this. I know most of you probably know what the song sounds like, but I just feel like hearing it. It says here, back in 1989, Bay Area thrash metal legends Testament released their third album, Practice What You Preach, that elevated the band's success in the late 80s and includes one of their best-known songs, Practice What You Preach. Just recently, the band announced a multi-format reissue of the album, and it's available for pre-order via Nuclear Blast's official website. It will ship on January the 24th, 2025. They've also released a lyric video for one of the record's tracks, Time Is Coming. This, in my view, an absolute classic, one that everyone worth a damn needs to be very familiar with. In case you're not, the time to change that is right now.
just like a wheel. Oh, I don't know, that's the way that it makes me feel.
For my money, Practice What You Preach it came out in 1989. It is a nose hair below the very best stuff that came out in that time, the cream of the crop. And Justice for All, Rust in Peace, what else? I mean, are there any other albums or any other seminal thrash albums? Actually, Seasons in the Abyss. So those three thrash albums, I'd say you've got a very strong argument to say they're better than Practice What You Preach, but this is not far off in my view. If you listen to the whole album, go back and check it out now. I've been doing a lot of revisiting of old school thrash in the lead up to myself and the two Mikes, the Mikes Hill and Scandado, eventually doing our 666 countdown of our favorite thrash albums. And I'll tell you right now that the run that Testament went on, from The Legacy, The New Order, Practice What You Preach, Souls of Black, The Ritual, and Low is fucking unparalleled. I mean, you know, we spoke about And Justice for All and Seasons in the Abyss and whatnot now, but to do a 6-album streak like they did, there's not really all that many bands that can lay claim to that. That can lay claim to that level of consistent quality. And for my money, and again, I might be a little biased here, but for my money, I loved Demonic and The Gathering as well. The Gathering in particular. Then they take a little break. They do First Strike Still Deadly, very cool. And then, since then, Formation of Damnation, Dark Roots of Earth, Brotherhood of the Snake, Titans of Creation. They're not really a band that misfires at all. They've never really put out anything that you would look at and you go, I'd be ashamed of this. There's no Lulus in their back catalogue. There's no Diabolos and Musicas in their back catalogue, and there's certainly no fucking cryptic writings. So that's why I think that not mentioning Testament amongst the elite of thrash metal is a disgrace, quite frankly. All right, let's check out what else we've got here. In Chaos Invocation have launched a new track. It says here, black metal purveyors Chaos Invocation are premiering Only in Darkness, the third single of their soon-to-be-released studio record, Wherever We May Roam. I think we listened to the second single when the Sinister Minister was on the podcast. I enjoyed that one very much. Let's hear whether this one lives up to the standard that they've set. All right, that's probably a good place to hold for a second, because it feels like we're about to experience a bit of a gear change, and honestly, probably a well-needed, a much-needed gear change. One of the things that I liked about This World Wants Us Dead, which was the name of the previous single, was it had a real air of malignance, of malevolence to it. Like from the moment that the song kicks into gear, you sense it immediately. You know, this sounds like a band that's serious. It means every word that they say. There was a real power, a real kind of core to the song that I think just worked extremely well. That feels to me to be lacking here. This isn't a bad track by any stretch of the imaginations, but it has nowhere near the impact of the previous single. Not at all. And it's interesting, actually, looking at the running sequence of the record. This is actually the song that comes after This World Once Is Dead. So, you know, it's lengthy. It's 7 minutes 35 seconds. So, like I said, I may very well be changing my tune, but at the risk of being too harsh, this opening part of the song is a bit of a damp squib on what will have preceded it in the kind of grand scheme of the record. Anyway, let's hear where the song goes after this. Still not sold, I'm afraid. If I have to highlight any positives, I think that the guitar sound is excellent. Every single thing about the guitar, the bass recording, the drums, even the vocals, it's a really good sounding record. I was very impressed with that previous single. I don't really like this one. It may be something that makes more sense when you listen to the album in its entirety, but as things stand right now, that's a thumbs down. Okay, we're going to listen to two more tracks, and then we'll take a quick spin past the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. First of all, we've got the Great Old Ones. They have got a fifth long player on the way. I mentioned earlier that the Great Old Ones are going to be at Fortress Festival next year, so I'm particularly curious to hear what this sounds like. The Great Old Ones, it says here, are back with a new album announcement. After more than 5 years, the French atmospheric black metal entity will unleash Kadath. The latter, which comes out on January the 24th, 2025, via Season of Mist, is a direct adaptation of the short story The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath by H.P. Lovecraft. The 61-minute offering was produced, mixed, and mastered by Francis Castet at Studio Saint Martin in Paris, France. I'll withhold any commentary comparison to the Great Old Ones' back catalogue until we've heard the first 90 seconds of the song. So without further ado. That, my friends, is what a return to form sounds like. I was going to go on a tear about how much I disliked their previous record, Cosmosism, that came out in 2019. I'm not the only one either. It's got a 69% rating on Metal Archives. After an album as solid as the record they put out in 2017, EOD, A Tale of Dark Legacy, that was just such a mammoth disappointment. It was just not the sound of the band playing to their strengths whatsoever. Clearly, they've learned their lesson, or maybe it's a case of 6 years away from the game has helped them reflect on the failings of their past. Whatever it is, I don't really give a shit, because if the rest of Cadath sounds like this, we're going to get off to a very good start in 2025. I mean, we've already got Abduction that we spoke about earlier. This gets released on the same day. That's a pretty tasty, it's a spicy way to get the year going. This sounds very, very good. I think the sound is lush and big. It's atmospheric, but it still sounds dark. It's not Coldplay black metal as some commenter on Metal Archives described a certain other band, not the great old ones. It just seems to land back in that Tale of Dark Legacy sound, but updated a little bit. It doesn't sound like a retread of that record. I love those melodic flourishes that are going on underneath the main riff. It kind of feels like the music is constructed in such a way that there's this big cascading sound, or this big cascading wall of riffs hitting you, but then this sort of undercurrent of interesting stuff happening all the time. So again, this is a long track. I don't know where it leads to from here, but first 2 minutes, I think carries with it the promise of another potential top notch. Little touches like that, I just love. The way they kind of end that sequence with the keyboard just being amplified a little bit, the vocalist just adding in that one line, we kind of go back into that rolling groove. Absolutely superb. Chef's kiss, as my friend Ralph would say. I was just having a gander at their drummer, because I had it in my head that they had changed drummers relatively recently. Julian Diana, I believe is how I would pronounce his surname. He joined in 2021. This young buck looks like he's maybe 14 years old. I don't want to insult the man, but he looks very young. But I mention that because, good God, can he play the drums? There's an effortless sense of rhythm, like sense of timing to this, that is just coming through crystal clear on these cans. And yeah, I'm here for it. Love it. This definitely, unequivocally earns another top-notch award. We've been giving those out pretty handily on this installment of the News Rant, but well deserved. Right, now we're going to find out whether perhaps the unthinkable is possible. Could we end off this News Rant with a top-notch, perhaps even a thumbs up being awarded to Cradle of Filth? They've got a brand new single. It says here, Cradle of Filth are excited to present you a brand new single dubbed Malignant Perfection. The accompanying official video was directed by Vincente Cordero. Album cover features a woman with 4 eyes and what looks like another eye in place of a third breast. But anyway, I have not been a fan of Cradle of Filth for a very long time. As a matter of fact, seeing them live in, I think it was 2003, put me off the band to such a degree that I've actually not really ever paid much attention to their music. I listened to some of the stuff off of their last record, Existence is Futile, and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. And everything else that I touched on prior to that, I couldn't stand either. So my expectations are almost exceptionally low, but we have been on this news rant before where I've had a band that I just couldn't stand, heard the track, and was like, whoa, something has been... I don't know whether they've gone up the mountains to, do peyote with Cheyenne's shaman, but whatever has happened, they're back to form, or at least they found a way to write something decent. So anyway, without much further build-up, let's hear what this new single sounds like. Like I mentioned earlier, it's called Malignant Perfection. Here goes nothing. I'll tell you something. This is the first time in a very, very long time, decades, that I've heard a Cradle of Filth song, and I actually found my... If you notice it on camera, I was actually tapping my foot while the song was playing. I was getting, at the start of that track, real Midian vibes, in the best possible way. Nice and restrained in the way that they use melody, really kind of leaning into their gothic influences. Danny Filth not giving in to his worst impulses, which is to shriek like, someone has taken a hammer to his testicles. So that it's not bad. They're still throwing in very much like almost pop music sensibility into the way that they write choruses. This is not. Firstly, it's not black metal. Secondly, in terms of how it's written, the audience it's geared to, it's also not it's not written for your average Marduk gig attendee. But I don't hate this. I'm shocked to admit it. But as much as I think I was on the news rant where I went on a fucking tear about how absolutely dreadful I think Existence is Futile was. The track that they released, or the tracks they released that I heard, I thought was abysmal. And I think that's still the case. I think if I went back and I listened to it, I'd still hate it. This, on the other hand, don't hate it at all. It's not going to get a top notch, with it's not. Well, let's not get too whack now. Let's not get too crazy. But it's not something that I want switched off instantly without, without a second thought. Let's listen to the next 60 seconds. All right, those vocals are fucking awful. So whoever produced this, note to that person, whenever Danny starts doing that, just come up behind him, just whack him upside the head and say, cut that out. You just cut that out, young man. But as I said, I don't hate the song. Great production as well. The production values of the track, unfortunately, doesn't measure up to the, I should say overshadows the production values of the video. The video looks like one of the YouTube ads that Thorpe Park filmed to promote their horror mazes this year. I mean, literally, it looks exactly like that. Maybe that was the intention all along, but yeah. Doesn't do very much for me. But as I said, don't hate the song. No mention of a new album yet. I'm assuming that they've put this out because they wanted to hype their upcoming tour. They were going on tour with, of all bands, Butcher Babies. I think, who else is going? I think High Parasite is on tour with them as well. High Parasite, of course, Aaron Stainthorpe's band. And then another band whose name I can't fathom from their logo. So probably doesn't matter. Anyways, right, let's wrap up by heading to Blabbermouth. I punished you guys last week with some Striper. A lot of comments about that. It says, Michael Sweet would like Ozzy Osbourne to give induction speech for Striper at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That really was one of the most abysmal songs I think we've listened to on the News Rant, beyond a shadow of a doubt. There's news here about Wasp performing their entire debut LP at Album One Alive North American tour kickoff. I'm assuming somehow Blackie has managed to get a hall pass from Jesus, which allows him to perform Animal. Either that, or he's just not. He's just mouthing the words, or he's letting the audience do the swearing and thus commit the sin. Testament and Possessed presented with Keys to the City by Albuquerque's Metalhead Mayor. Seems like a pretty good move. Let's see what else. Cradle of Filth's Danny Filth says, filming Malignant Perfection music video in Czech Republic was great fun. I still think that they filmed that at Thorpe Park. John Schaefer on his involvement in the U.S. Capitol riot. I was wrong and I made a terrible mistake. They're still beating the drum of the supposed insurrection, where you guys know my thoughts on that. He was armed. I think John was one of the most armed men that were there on the day, and he was armed with bear spray. And apparently that so intimidated the armed police officers that they stood back and allowed him to wander freely in the Capitol building. What a fucking circus. Drummer Nick Pierce quits as I lay crying. I need to retain my personal health and integrity. Why did you join the band in the first place? Why were you part of the resurrected band in the first place when Tim Lambesis came out of prison, if now all of a sudden your personal health and integrity is at risk? Sick of it all's Lou Collar offers a health update saying that the cancer has not spread. Let's pause on this one because Mike Scandato and I spoke about it when he was on the podcast last time. And this was sad news. It says here, vocalist Lou Collar of New York hardcore legends, Sick of It All, is preparing to go into surgery after recently being diagnosed with an esophageal tumor. Earlier today, Collar shared a video update via social media in which he said, "Hey everybody, what's up? It's Lou. Real quick update. I'm heading in for my surgery tomorrow, which is great. The chemo, besides messing me up and kicking my ass, actually did its job. The tumor is said to be dead flesh. That's what the nurse said. I don't know what it means, but I guess it's good. The cancer has not spread. They will be cutting out the infected area tomorrow, so it should be an 8-hour operation. What do I care? I'm going to be sleeping through the whole thing. And hopefully I'll see you guys afterwards. It might be a little while before an update, depending on how well I feel. But thank you again for your support, prayers, well wishes, the gifts, the financial support, as always. Thank you, and I hope you're all doing good. I'll see how it goes. See ya." Good news. I mean, you know, it's shit that he had to deal with that. It was great to see the amount of support and the amount of love that came from the scene for him. But I think it is good news that it's not an aggressive cancer that has spread and, you know, that is now threatening his life. Hopefully he gets to do the surgery without any problems. And I kind of feel like we've lost too many people. You know, we're in a place at a time, you know, in a generation where, you know, Necro Butcher mentioned it last week. There's a very good chance that we might not see a Mayhem 50th anniversary tour, which makes it all the more important for people to be going out and checking out the Mayhem 40th anniversary tour. But it's sobering to think about that. I was going to say disconcerting, but it's sobering to think about that a lot of these bands that we have the opportunity to see now, I mean, do we really want to place bets on whether we're going to be able to see Judas Priest in 5 years from now or Metallica in 10 years from now? But all that being said, I feel like we've lost enough good people for this year. 2024 has had its fill. So I'm very glad, I'm extremely glad, as a matter of fact, to hear that Lou Collar is, you know, at least it sounds like there is light at the end of the tunnel. And actually, friends, on that note, I'm going to wrap it up for this week. I'm actually going to wrap it up. It's Halloween, and there's two bands in particular whose back catalogs are celebrated year-round at the Smith House, but particularly so in the month of October. It should come as no surprise. Those bands/musicians are Typo Negative and Glenn Danzig. And when I say Glenn Danzig, I'm talking Misfits, Sam Hain, and the Danzig Records. We're going to finish off with a Danzig track. Not a popular choice, and some might be scratching their heads and booing, hissing, carrying on, but as far as I'm concerned, on this podcast, latter-day Danzig is seen as brilliant, and I'll hear no other words said about it. When I say latter-day Danzig, I talk about particularly 666, Satan's Child, and Illuciferi, both albums that I think are absolutely fantastic. We're going to listen to a track called Unspeakable off of 666, Satan's Child. If you wrote that album off, I implore you, give this one a crack, because I think you might come to different insights after you've listened to it. I remember seeing them play this live with Johnny Kelly on drums, and I was just completely and utterly blown away. So this is what we're going to finish off this week with. I'm back next week with Joseph Gigan of Sladeer, his first ever long-form podcast appearance. Sladeer is a fucking sensational black metal band, and Joseph Gigan is an intense character. So I'm excited about sharing that with you. Of course, you've got the Horsemen to look forward to for the remainder of the week. And I will also say from my side, as I always sign off, but I genuinely do mean it, whatever it is that you are doing, wherever it is that you are, I hope you're safe, I hope you're healthy, and I certainly look forward to seeing you bad motherfuckers again next week.